Chapter 1. After 40 years in the Jianghu, who could defeat him? This was the praise the people of the Jianghu had for the sword demon, who stood at the peak of the way of the sword. However, the legend of the generation, the demon of the sword, after defeating all the experts of the way of the sword in the heaven-connecting peak with a withered branch, he disappeared from the Jianghu. Some people said that the sword demon had broken through the sky and ascended. Some said that the sword demon had committed suicide, because he was invincible and lonely. There were all kinds of guesses. South Horizon region, Saint Origin dynasty, Milky Way province, Xia family. As one of the 5 great families of the Milky Way province, the Xia family had a deep foundation and produced many talented people. In the current Xia family, there was a young man and woman with extraordinary talent. They were like dragons and phoenixes among men. However, 3 months ago, after the Sword King's secret realm opened, the Xia family only had one proud daughter left, Xia Yubing. In a remote corner of the Xia family's mansion, there was a desolate courtyard. The courtyard was overgrown with weeds, and there was a thatched hut in it. On the bed in the hut, there was a young man in a black robe with a pale face. The young man's eyes were closed, and he was barely breathing. His face was as pale as paper, and his lips were pale. Even so, the young man with his eyes closed still had some youthful spirit. His eyebrows were sharp, his nose was high, and his lips were thin. It was not hard to imagine how eye-catching the young man would be when he was in high spirits. At this moment, the unconscious youngster lying on the bed was the youngster who had stood shoulder to shoulder with Xia Yubing in the Xia family. The youngster whose talent had shocked the entire Milky Way prefecture, Yiguchen. Boom! At this moment, thunderclouds suddenly rolled in the sky outside Xiaosua's courtyard, and muffled thunder rumbled. Whoosh! An incomparably dazzling bolt of lightning fell from the 9 heavens tribulation cloud. The place where it fell was the courtyard filled with weeds. Boom! The lightning struck Yiguchen's body. Not long after, the young man slowly opened his eyes with a cough. In an instant, his eyes flashed like a sword. I am. The black-robed young man slowly got up and pressed his temples. His mind was in chaos. I am Dugawubai. After defeating all the experts of the way of the sword in the heaven-connecting peak, I broke through the sky and ascended. Then, the heavens tribulation lightning fell. And then, the young man's eyes suddenly narrowed. He remembered now. In the lightning tribulation, a divine sword bathed in tens of thousands of lightning tribulation appeared. It was like the judgment of the heavenly Tao, wanting to kill him. Although Duga Wubai was known as the #1 swordsman, the demon of the sword, how could he be strong enough to contend against the tribulation of the heavenly Tao? He remembered that in the end, he had condensed the selfless sword Tao that he had summed up all his life, and combined it with Duga's 9 sword moves to collide with the sword of thunder calamity. After that, he had lost all his senses. When he opened his eyes again, he was in his current state. The lightning tribulation sword that had manifested from the heavenly tribulation had actually carried Duga Wubai's soul into this alternate world and possessed Yiguchen's body. In Yiguchen's mind, countless memories were churning. Not only were there memories of Duga Wubai, but there were also memories of the young Yiguchen. South Horizon region, Saint Origin dynasty, Sky River prefecture, Sword King's secret realm. The Sword King's secret realm was located in the northern part of Saint Origin dynasty. After it was accidentally opened, it attracted almost all the experts in the nearby prefectures. And Yiguchen and the others had only managed to enter the deepest part of the secret realm after going through many dangers. They had the hope of obtaining the sword, martial arts, sword Dao inheritance of the North River Sword King Chu Donglu, and so on. But in the end, Yiguchen was plotted against by Xia Yubing, who was traveling with him. At the same time, a mysterious young expert attacked and defeated Yiguchen, causing his sword vein to be completely destroyed. Moreover, the innate sword embryo in his body was also forcefully taken away. Yiguchen would never forget Xia Yubing's heartlessness. He would also never forget the young man who took away his innate sword embryo, one of the 7 great bears of Starry Sword Pavilion, Mizar Star Gu Xiaoyang. However, after the Sword King's secret realm, the rumors in the outside world or that Yi Guchen wanted to monopolize the North River Sword King Chu Donglio's inheritance. So he plotted against Xia Yubing. Then, Gu Xiaoyang acted chivalrously and saved the damsel in distress. After saving Xia Yubing, he crippled Yi Guchen, this treacherous villain. It was a perfect example of framing someone. Yi Guchen had no chance to refute at all. In addition, Gu Xiaoyang's terrifying background from Starry Sword Pavilion increased the credibility of the story. As a result, Yi Guchen went from being the leader of the 7 Great Bears of Starry River, known as the genius sword cultivator of the Young Sword sect, to the current hypocrite, villain, and trash that everyone despised. After that, Yi Guchen was plotted against by the Thunderbolt Sword Master, Bei Dangui, who was also one of the 7 Great Bears of Starry River. He pretended that he had committed suicide by falling into the river. In the end, he was discovered by a fisherman, who directly sent Yi Guchen's body back to the Xia family. After temporarily sorting out the memories in his mind, Yi Guchen frowned and pondered. It seemed that his current situation was not good. However, he did not care about it. This world was far more exciting than the Jianghu of his previous life. The 9 realms were vast, and 9 immemorial divine swords hung in the sky, replacing the blazing sun and the bright moon to illuminate the 9 realms. Sword cultivators could ride their swords across the sky and take the enemy's head from thousands of miles away. There were also thousands of ways to practice, thousands of methods, countless geniuses, kings contending for hegemony, and countless secret and restricted areas. The legends of the strong have been passed down for tens of thousands of years. The Jianghu of my previous life was just a pool to me. This world is the real vast ocean. Yi Guchen's eyes were rekindled. This was the excitement that belonged to the sword demon. In his previous life, Duge Wubai's sword Dao was invincible in the world. He was lonely as a master, and had never tasted defeat in his life. In this alternate world, he had returned to the beginning. However, compared to others, he had the memories of his previous life. Moreover, they were the memories of the invincible sword demon. Since I've taken over your body, I'll settle all your grudges. From now on, I'm Yi Guchen. After making the vow in his heart, Yi Guchen immediately felt a trace of worry dissipating. That was the obsession that Yi Guchen's original soul gave birth to. With the worry gone, this body was truly one with spirit and flesh. There was no longer any harmony. Just as Yi Guchen wanted to check the condition of his body, a loud explosion came from outside Xiao Sua's courtyard. That was the sound of the courtyard's door being smashed open. The legend of the Heavenly River Province's young sword master, Yi Guchen, can't really be dead, right? If so, my princess will be disappointed. A female voice with a hint of mockery came. In just a few breaths of time, a young girl dressed in a red skirt armor, dressed as a female guard, stepped into the room. Her appearance was quite pretty. She pretended to cover her nose with her hand, and had a look of disgust on her face. A rotten and moldy aura. Is this the residence of the genius swordsman, who defeated the Saint Origin Dynasty's 5 great sword Dao geniuses, and obtained the title of Sword Master? The female guard looked at the youth, who had just woken up on the bed, with a disdainful look on her face. Young Sword Master was the title of the Saint Origin Dynasty's younger generation of sword cultivators' dreams. One had to go through many rounds of selection and killing to obtain this glorious title. However, the former young sword master was now a hypocrite that everyone despised, a piece of trash. Yi Guchen looked at the female guard in front of him, frowning and not saying a word. Seeing Yi Guchen's attitude, the female guard snorted coldly and said with disdain, "Do you still think that you are the former leader of the Heavenly River Province's 7 prides? Stop pretending. Since you are awake, let me tell you that Princess Yuanyang is training in the Cloud Valley mountain range. After 2 months of training, she will come and take you as a sword attendant. I hope that you will still be alive at that time, and not let down her good intentions." The female guard said with a cold smile. Yi Guchen remained silent. Seeing Yi Guchen's attitude, the female guard raised her eyebrows and felt dissatisfied. A fierce aura pressed down on Yi Guchen. However, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. Yi Guchen was still unmoved. He slowly raised his eyes and looked at the female guard. "Are you done? If you are, you can leave." Yi Guchen said lightly. His dark eyes were like a bottomless abyss, chilling people who looked at them. Being stared at by such a gaze, the arrogant female guard suddenly shivered. What's going on? I am an expert of the profound origin realm. How can I be scared by this trash? The female guard was secretly surprised. I am just reminding you. When you become a sword attendant, you must serve my master well and follow him around. After saying that, the female guard did not dare to stay any longer and turned around to leave. Yi Guchen was very calm from the beginning. His expression did not change at all. The so-called sword attendants were attendants who followed some experts or geniuses. They were attendants who supported and nurtured their treasured swords. They were equivalent to servants. However, this Princess Yuanyang wanted to take Yi Guchen as a sword attendant. Obviously, she did not have the intention to help him. She just wanted to humiliate him. Yi Guchen thought for a moment and understood the ins and outs of the matter. It turned out that when Yi Guchen was still the leader of the 7 prides of Tianhe, he was loved by Princess Yuanyang. However, at that time, he and Xia Yubing were like a pair of dragon and phoenix, so he naturally rejected Princess Yuanyang's feelings. Presumably, it was this that made Princess Yuanyang hate him. When Yi Guchen was in dire straits, she made such a request as revenge for the humiliation. Making me a sword attendant, ha? Yi Guchen shook his head lightly with a smile on his face. He did not pay any more attention to her. Instead, he closed his eyes and immersed his mind into his body. Not to mention this world. Even in his previous life, Duge Wubai could observe his own body. However, this observation made Yi Guchen slightly stunned, because in his lower dantian, there was a mysterious small sword. It was emitting traces of lightning and was floating in the chaos. Thunder Tribulation Sword? Yi Guchen was slightly surprised. Chapter 2. Originally, Yi Guchen's dantian was occupied by the innate sword embryo hidden in his body. It was also because of this innate sword embryo that Yi Guchen was able to become a 7th grade Heaven's Pride. There were 9 grades of geniuses. 1st to 3rd grade Heaven's Pride were outstanding and extraordinary. 3rd to 6th grade Heaven's Pride were dragons and phoenixes among men. Their cultivation speed, comprehension, and foundation were all superior to ordinary geniuses. 7th to 9th grade Heaven's Pride were peerless geniuses. Not only were their talents perfect in all aspects, but they also possessed innate abilities that were bestowed by the heavens. It was rumored that above the 9th grade Heaven's Pride, there were 10th grade Heaven's Prides. However, such a Heaven's Pride was hard to find in the entire South Horizon region, or even the 9 regions, let alone the Saint Origin dynasty. Yi Guchen was able to become the leader of the 7 Heaven's Prides in the Sky River province, mainly because of the innate sword embryo in his body. It was an innate ability that could destroy all techniques, and was always successful. Unfortunately, his innate sword embryo was taken away by Gu Xiaoyang using a secret technique. Not only did this cause Yi Guchen to lose his innate sword embryo, his profound qi was greatly damaged, and his cultivation level dropped from the peak of the profound qi realm to the body refining realm. Yi Guchen was only 17 years old. Originally, his potential was terrifying. However, after this incident, his cultivation level dropped greatly, and his body withered. He had lost all his potential. The source of all this was Gu Xiaoyang and Xia Yubing. In Yi Guchen's heart, these 2 were enemies that he must eliminate. Slowly suppressing the coldness in his heart, Yi Guchen began to observe the Thunder Calamity sword in his dantian. The sword's body was black, and he couldn't tell what material it was made of. Traces of lightning wrapped around the sword's body. With great interest, Yi Guchen slowly probed with his divine sense. As soon as he touched it, the Thunder Calamity sword suddenly buzzed and vibrated. Streaks of silver lightning moved like lightning snakes along Yi Guchen's divine sense, and spread towards his unopened sea of consciousness. The intense pain made his brain feel as if it was being chopped by an axe. Even the sword demon who had gone through thousands of hardships and cultivated all felt as if his brain was about to split open. Yi Guchen sat cross-legged on the bed. He suddenly formed a seal with one hand and silently chanted the heart-concentrating mantra. Heart coagulation spell was not a martial art from Jianghu in Sword Demon's previous life. Instead, It was a secret skill that Yi Guqin had mastered in this world. Unlike martial arts and cultivation methods, secret arts were mostly auxiliary methods. Although they were not as good as cultivation methods to lay the foundation, and were not as good as martial arts to kill in actual combat, they were indispensable. The sword demon had fused with Yi Guqin's memories, so this secret technique was naturally included in it. Although the heart-concentrating incantation wasn't a high-level secret technique, it still had some effect. Yi Guqin's sea of consciousness, which had yet to be opened, gradually calmed down, after which, the strands of lightning inexplicably transformed into ancient characters that were the size of ants, and emitted a bright light. It's actually a scripture. Yi Guqin was astonished. There was actually a mysterious ancient scripture, hidden in the Thunder Tribulation sword, that carried the sword demon's soul. The heavenly Tao is not benevolent, all things do not appear. In the primordial chaos, it is difficult to have many people. To seek the path of immortality, bathe in the 9 tribulations, climb the 9 heavenly steps, obtain the fortune of eternity. After experiencing it for a while, Yi Guqin had a rough idea of what was going on. The scripture engraved on this mysterious thunder sword was called the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. Yi Guqin knew that in this world cultivation methods and martial arts were divided into postnatal, innate, spirit, king, emperor and saint levels. For example, Xia Yubing, who had once stood shoulder to shoulder with him, practiced the upper-level innate cultivation method of the Xia family, Mystic Soul Lunar Secret Scripture. Xia Yubing, who practiced the Mystic Soul Lunar Secret Scripture, had a yin attribute in her profound qi. Combined with the Xia family's unique innate sword technique, the Frost Sword technique, her power was even stronger. From this, it could be seen how important cultivation methods were to a cultivator. A good cultivation method would not only lay down the foundation, but it would also bring about various enhancements to the cultivator's abilities. Yi Guqin didn't know what the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra's grade was. However, from the mysterious Thunder Sword, he could tell that the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra was definitely not an ordinary cultivation method. The cultivation method that Yi Guqin practiced was the Myriad Sword Scripture that his father had passed down to him when he was young. This was a cultivation method that was closely related to sword techniques. It was also because of this cultivation method that Yi Guqin had cultivated 108 sword veins. Sword veins had a great effect on sword qi, and could increase the power of sword techniques by several times. The 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra must be practiced, but the sword veins cultivated by the Myriad Sword Scripture are also very important to me. Yi Guqin muttered and pondered. The Myriad Sword Scripture, as his father had said when he was young, was a rare spiritual level cultivation method. It could be said that it was a cultivation method that all sword cultivators yearned for even in their dreams. Yi Guqin was infatuated with the sword and couldn't give up on practicing it. Yi Guqin suddenly remembered that Xia Yubing seemed to have asked him tactfully if he could pass down the Myriad Sword Scripture to her. However, the Myriad Sword Scripture was a secret that couldn't be passed down. His father had warned Yi Guqin strictly. Perhaps this was one of the reasons why Xia Yubing attacked him in the Sword King Mystery Realm. After understanding the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, Yi Guqin understood that the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra was to pass through 9 tribulations to become an immortal. Each tribulation had its own dangers. Furthermore, the later tribulation, the harder it was to pass through. At the moment, Yi Guqin could only temporarily understand the first tribulation of the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, blood tribulation of the physical body. According to the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, if one succeeded in passing the blood tribulation of the physical body, he would have a perfect physical body. He would have the strength of dragons and elephants, and his blood would be like a rainbow, establishing a perfect foundation. If he failed, his flesh would burn and dry up. His bones would break, and his tendons would break. He would turn into ashes. In terms of danger, the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra is number 1. However, the results obtained are also far from what ordinary martial techniques can compare to. Yi Guqin's eyes shone brightly. Even the profound Soul Lunar Secret Scripture that Xia Yubing practiced, apart from giving Xia Yubing yin attribute power, could only increase her profound qi by 3 levels. It did not have the effect of tempering her body. However, the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra could increase Yi Guqin's various abilities with every tribulation that he passed. Just the ability of a perfect physical body was not something that ordinary martial techniques could achieve. The blood tribulation of the physical body was divided into 3 minor tribulations. After passing the first minor tribulation, one's blood would ignite with fire and erupt with enormous power. At the same time, one's physique would be greatly strengthened, and one would have a terrifying recovery ability. Although one would not be able to regrow broken limbs, it was already very astonishing. After passing the second minor tribulation, one would have the strength of dragons and elephants. Their strength and speed would both increase. After passing the third minor tribulation, one would have a perfect physical body and establish a solid foundation. It would be a perfect foundation for one's future cultivation path. With my current strength, I am far from being able to pass the blood tribulation of the physical body. I can't even pass the first minor tribulation. If I force myself to pass the tribulation, my physical body will only collapse. What I need to do now is to prevent my body from weakening. Yi Guqin pondered. The condition of his body was very bad. Even the blood that kept him alive was close to exhaustion. Right now, the most important thing was not to cultivate, but to protect his life. If I want to recover my blood, ordinary herbs are useless. Only spiritual herbs can be used. As for spiritual herbs, I have to go to the Xia family's medicine hall to get them. Yi Guqin stood up and took the jade token that represented his identity as a core disciple of the Xia family. Chapter 3. Yi Guqin walked out of his residence. The sky was shining brightly, but what brought the sunlight was not the sun, but an ancient sword. The name of the sword was Celestial Emperor. After inheriting Yi Guqin's memories, he naturally knew that in this world, there was a list. The ancient sword records. The ancient sword records were divided into the heaven and earth lists. The heaven lists recorded 36 divine swords that were born from heaven and earth. They were truly heaven and earth as furnaces, and nature as workmanship. Each sword had the power to overturn the universe and cut off yin and yang. On the other hand, there were 72 divine swords recorded on the earth board. These divine swords were either forged by divine craftsmen or nurtured by ancient sword emperors. Their power might be slightly inferior to the heaven board's famed swords, but they were definitely rare divine weapons. The ancient sword records and the heaven and earth lists were the ultimate dream of all sword cultivators. Yi Guqin raised his head and looked at the ancient sword Celestial Emperor that hung in the sky. In the ancient sword records heaven lists, Celestial Emperor was ranked 14th. It could be imagined that to be able to replace the sun and moon, illuminating the earth, it was enough to show the vast power of the ancient sword records. Unfortunately, Yi Guqin shook his head. It was too early for him to think about this. Although there was a rumor in the South Sky region that if anyone could obtain the Celestial Emperor sword, they would be able to sit on the throne of the Celestial Emperor, overlooking all living beings, and become an ancient great emperor. But so far, no one had been able to do it. There was no lack of peerless experts who wanted to obtain the Celestial Emperor. But in the end, without exception, they all died. But Yi Guqin suspected that the mysterious thunder tribulation sword in his dantian was related to the ancient sword records. Perhaps only the ancient sword records, and the heaven list's famous sword, had such supreme power that it could bring one's soul into this world. But this was only Yi Guqin's illusory guess. It was useless for him to think about it now. Not long after, Yi Guqin arrived at the Xia family's spiritual medicine hall. Ordinary herbs were useless to Yi Guqin now. Only spiritual medicine could nourish and recover Yi Guqin's declining body. In front of the spiritual medicine hall, there were many disciples of the Xia family who had come to purchase spiritual medicine. Within the Xia family, all kinds of cultivation methods, martial arts, secret techniques, and elixirs could only be exchanged with contribution points. Previously, although Yi Guqin was not a member of the Xia family, he had been fostered in the Xia family. Furthermore, Yi Guqin's extraordinary talent had allowed Yi Guqin's life in the Xia family to be smooth sailing and he was respected by many disciples of the Xia family. But now, after being slandered by Xia Yubing and Gu Xiaoyang, Yi Guchen's reputation became unbearably bad, and everyone loathed and despised him. It's actually Yi Guchen. That brat actually dares to come out? That's right. He actually dares to walk around in our Xia family's territory. Does he not know how much our Xia family hates him? That's right. If it wasn't for his ugly aunt, our Xia family would have kicked him out long ago. Yi Guchen's expression did not change in the slightest as he faced the whispers of the surrounding Xia family disciples. Although he looked like a 17-year-old youth, he had experienced the hardships of the world in his heart. There were many things that he did not care about. Yi Guchen stepped into the spiritual medicine hall. The attendant at the entrance glanced at Yi Guchen with a trace of astonishment in his eyes, as if he was wondering why Yi Guchen had come here. But immediately, the astonishment in the attendant's eyes turned into indifference. Looking at the attendant in front of him, who used to follow him around and flatter him, Yi Guchen shook his head lightly. He had come to the spiritual medicine hall mainly to find 3 types of elixirs: the blood spirit vermilion fruit, the yang yuan grass, and the connecting meridian flower. The yang yuan grass and the connecting meridian flower were still okay, as they were both low-grade elixirs. But the blood spirit vermilion fruit was a middle-grade elixir. Although there was only a difference of 1 grade, the difference in value was like heaven and earth. However, according to Yi Guchen's previous memories, there was still a blood spirit vermilion fruit in the Xia family's spiritual medicine hall. The yang yuan grass and the connecting meridian flower cost 500 clan contribution points, while the blood spirit vermilion fruit cost 1,500 clan contribution points. Fortunately, Yi Guchen had previously been a Heaven's Pride and had brought many benefits to the Xia family. He had even guided a group of Xia family disciples to participate in various martial arts competitions, treasure hunts and so on, accumulating a large number of contribution points. Soon, Yi Guchen had found the yang yuan grass and the connecting meridian flower. Finally, Yi Guchen saw the blood spirit vermilion fruit on the 2nd floor of the spiritual medicine hall. Just as Yi Guchen was about to take the blood spirit vermilion fruit, another slender hand beat him to it. Yi Guchen's eyes narrowed as he looked over. It was a young girl dressed in a bright red slim-fit outfit. Her face was delicate, and her body was well developed, her breasts full and perky. She held the blood spirit vermilion fruit in one hand, and looked at Yi Guchen playfully. On the 2nd floor of the spiritual medicine hall, there were also many Xia family disciples present. When they saw Yi Guchen and the young girl, they all revealed looks of anticipation. It's Xia Ying'er. She actually found fault with Yi Guchen. Didn't she always admire Yi Guchen? Maybe. After all, Yi Guchen was indeed a dragon among men. Many of the young girls in the Xia family secretly fell in love with him. Fortunately, his disguise was exposed. Otherwise, who knows how many more people would have been deceived by him. Looking at the young girl who had taken the blood spirit vermilion fruit, Yi Guchen searched his mind. Xia Ying'er. Among the younger generation of the Xia family, she was considered to be one of the most talented. She was only 16 years old, and her cultivation was at the 3rd level of the essence stage. Moreover, she was a 3rd-grade genius. In the Xia family, which had a large population and many disciples, there were only 3 people with such talent. What use does this blood spirit vermilion fruit have for you? Yi Guchen asked indifferently. Xia Ying'er was no stranger to Yi Guchen. He had once brought her to the Cloud Valley mountain range to hunt for demonic beasts under Xia Ying'er's pleas. She had used the demonic cores and bones as materials to forge a sword. At that time, Xia Ying'er even called Yi Guchen Big Brother Yi. As for now, oh, you don't have to worry about what use it has for me. Yi Guchen, don't tell me you want to use this spiritual medicine to restore your cultivation? Xia Ying'er's eyes flashed with mockery. That's right. It's best if you have your cultivation crippled, so that you won't commit any more crimes in the future. If not for Miss Xia Yubing being in seclusion to cultivate the North River Sword King's inheritance, she would have personally expelled Yi Guchen from the Xia family. Xia Ying'er's words attracted the agreement of the surrounding Xia family disciples. Yi Guchen frowned slightly. It seemed that it was indeed difficult for him to do anything in the Xia family. However, he still had to obtain what he should obtain and fight for what he should fight for. He still had thousands of contribution points that he had yet to use up, so how could he waste them? So, you don't need the blood spirit vermilion fruit, but you don't want to give it to me? Yi Guchen asked. So what? What can you do about it? Xia Ying'er raised her full breasts and made a provocative look. She's trying to provoke me. Is she waiting for me to make the first move? Yi Guchen thought to himself. In his memories, there was an ant who took care of him and had a high cultivation. This was also the reason why the Xia family had never forcefully expelled Yi Guchen. But on the other hand, if Yi Guchen was the one who initiated the trouble, then the Xia family would have sufficient reason to expel Yi Guchen. Xia Ying'er was merely the fuse that ignited the fire. But would Yi Guchen back down? Of course not. Whether it was the former sword demon or the current young sword master, neither would. Give it to me. Yi Guchen dashed towards Xia Ying'er. Xia Ying'er's face lit up, thinking that Yi Guchen had fallen for her trick. She immediately shouted, Yi Guchen, how dare you attack me first? Fellow Xia family disciples, be my witnesses. Don't blame me if you're injured or crippled. Of course, how dare he attack cousining, Yeah, is Yi Guchen stupid? His cultivation is crippled, and he's only in the body refining realm. How dare he attack Ying'er, who is an expert in the essence realm? Body refining realm was to temper the body's blood and qi, while essence realm was to condense the blood and qi into essence realm. Whether it was strength, speed, or reflexes, it far exceeded the body refining realm in every aspect. Every realm was like a mountain. This saying was true. Xia Ying'er tapped her feet lightly. Not only did she not retreat, she instead charged towards Yi Guchen. If it was before, she would not have the guts to attack Yi Guchen, even if she was threatened with a knife. However, it was different now. Yi Guchen's cultivation had fallen to the body refining realm. In Xia Ying'er's eyes, he was no longer a threat. Xia Ying'er pointed her finger forward. Her essence realm condensed in her finger, producing a whooshing sound. The Xia family's middle-level postnatal finger technique, wind spirit finger. If a qi refining realm grandmaster used it, it would produce a strong gust of wind. However, even if Xia Ying'er was only in the essence realm, her wind spirit finger was still impressive. Just as the spectating Xia family disciples were waiting for Yi Guchen to be severely injured by the wind spirit finger, Yi Guchen's figure suddenly changed. His footsteps were like a weeping willow swaying with the wind. When the wind spirit finger was only a few inches away from Yi Guchen's chest, Yi Guchen's figure swayed like a willow and dodged it. What kind of movement technique is that? Xia Ying'er was surprised. She was familiar with Yi Guchen, but she had never seen Yi Guchen use such a movement technique before. Xia Ying'er naturally did not know that this was not the Xia family's movement technique, nor was it Yi Guchen's original movement technique. It was a movement technique from sword demon Dugu Wubai's previous life, Willow Catkin Wind. In his previous life, Dugu Wubai had not only mastered the way of the sword, but also the way of the sword. Willow Catkin Wind movement technique was just one of the many movement techniques he had. After dodging Xia Ying'er's wind spirit finger, Yi Guchen's figure flashed, and he pointed out with 2 fingers. It was a martial technique from his previous life, sharp spirit finger. Xia Ying'er's wind spirit finger was instantly suppressed by the sharp spirit finger. Not good. Yi Guchen's grasp of the situation was too terrifying. From dodging the wind spirit finger to using the sharp spirit finger, it only took a breath. However, Xia Ying'er was an expert of the essence realm. Her delicate body trembled, and a violent force spread out, directly pushing Yi Guchen away. Then, the origin ring on her finger flashed and a fiery red sword pierced towards Yi Guchen. Is this the strength of the essence realm? Yi Guchen was pushed back by the attack. The blood and qi in his body churned, but the scarlet sword had already arrived. Yi Guchen vaguely remembered that Xia Ying'er had begged him to kill a fire cloud spiritual fox and use its demon core to forge the fire cloud sword. He had never thought that the sword that he had forged for her would be used to kill him. How ironic. Even Yi Guchen would not be able to do as he pleased with the cultivation of the profound origin realm and the fire cloud sword, a low-grade spiritual weapon. He wiped the origin ring on his finger, and a sharp sword full of cracks appeared out of thin air. It was Yi Guchen's sword, the high-level spiritual weapon, the Soaring Cloud Sword. Unfortunately, the Soaring Cloud Sword was seriously damaged in the fight with Gu Xiaoyang, and was almost scrapped. Yi Guchen did not have time to get a new sword, so he could only use it for the time being. With the sword in his hand, Yi Guchen seemed to have changed. His thin and weak body seemed to have become tall and strong in an instant. Yi Guchen. The disciples of the Xia family were surprised. At the same time, they sighed in their hearts. He was indeed worthy of the title of Sword Master. Even though his halo had fallen, he still had such power. Pretending. I'm not afraid of you. Xia Ying's heart was beating like a drum, but she was still very tough on the surface. Her fire cloud sword broke through the air and turned into 10 sword shadows, like a cloud of fire. It was one of the 3 Xiantian sword arts of the Xia family, the Thousand Shadows sword art. Let's test the sword arts of this world first, Yi Guchen thought to himself. He also attacked with the Soaring Cloud sword in his hand. The Soaring Cloud sword in his hand suddenly turned and stabbed out. The sharp qi cut through the air and made a sharp whistle. It was not a Xiantian sword art, nor was it an acquired sword art. It was the most ordinary and ungraded piercing moon sword art. Haha, I thought he was going to use some ultimate move. It's just the piercing moon sword art. Not only did Xia Ying show disdain, but the disciples of the Xia family also shook their heads and laughed. The difference in power between an ungraded sword art and an ungraded sword art was too big. Not to mention the difference between the body refining realm and the essence realm. This kind of collision was no surprise to the onlookers. Clang. Accompanied by the ear-piercing sound of metal clashing, a figure fell back heavily and spat out a mouthful of blood. As expected, it was Yi Guchen. Ha! As expected, the former sword sex Yi Guchen was defeated by Miss Ying. The surrounding onlookers laughed and said. Yi Guchen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with one hand and smiled faintly. Ah! Yi Guchen, I'm going to kill you. Xia Ying screamed shrilly, piercing the eardrums of the onlookers. Cousin Xia Ying, what's wrong? The onlookers looked over and their gazes froze. Chapter 4. On Xia Ying's fair and tender face, a bright red wound appeared. It was a very glaring sight. Yi Guchen's sword had actually destroyed Xia Ying's face. His method was truly ruthless. Hiss! The disciples of the Xia family, who were watching, felt their hearts tremble. Is he still the righteous and chivalrous Yi Guchen? Yi Guchen, I want you dead. The importance of appearance to a young girl was unquestionable. Even she could not imagine how Yi Guchen had left a scar on her face. Recalling the previous exchange, Xia Ying only saw a bright silver flash before her eyes, like a shooting star piercing the moon, fast as light. In the next moment, she felt a burning pain on her face. That sword was unavoidable. At least Xia Ying would not have been able to dodge it. If that sword had not pierced her face, but her neck. Hissed Xia Ying's heart suddenly shuddered. It was hard to imagine that if this battle were to spread, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. An Essence Realm expert was actually injured by a Body Refining Realm cultivator. Even if that Body Refining Realm cultivator was once a young sword grandmaster, it was still enough to make people sigh. The chasm between realms was not something that could be easily bridged. Facing the crowd's shock, anger, malice and fear, Yi Guchen did not reveal any obvious expression. In order to reach the peak of the sword Dao, Yi Guchen would personally sweep away all obstacles. Xia Ying was nothing more than a pebble on the road. Yi Guchen died. Although she was shocked by Yi Guchen's sword, Xia Ying did not believe that he could use such a powerful sword again. She once again controlled the fire cloud sword and poured her essence qi into the sword. In an instant, a red demon pill was embedded in the sword hilt, releasing a demonic red glow. It was the power of the fire cloud spiritual fox's demon pill. 2 red vessel meridians suddenly spread out along the Yao Dan. With the support of the Yao core, Xia Ying's aura rose once again. Coupled with her delicate face that was stained with blood, she really did have a fierce aura. Just as Yi Guchen was about to forcefully vibrate his qi and blood to make a last stand, a bright sword suddenly flew over and pierced towards Xia Ying. Xia Yinger's expression changed slightly. She controlled the fire cloud sword and collided with the flying sword. Xia Yinger instantly took a few steps back, the essence chi in her body vibrating nonstop. A girl in green, like a fairy, walked over. Her face was like a lotus, delicate and without any makeup. Her temperament was as elegant as a lotus. She looked at Yi Guchun with her watery eyes. There was a complicated look in her eyes. There was some heartache, some infatuation, but also some helplessness and pity. Once upon a time, he was someone she could only look up to. But now she had to save him. It's sure. Why did she save that trash? This girl in green was one of the 3 third-grade geniuses of the Xia family, Xia Shir. Like Xia Yinger, she used to chase after Yi Guchun's back, hoping to attract his attention. However, compared to Xia Yubing, who had a 5th-grade talent, she was too far away. But now, the person she used to look up to was reduced to such a state. Xia Shir couldn't help but sigh. However, her choice was different from Xia Yinger's. Xia Yinger chose to take revenge, while she chose to help. Although she knew that Yi Guchun would never recover his former glory, she still wanted to help him. Xia Shir, you want to interfere? Xia Yinger clenched her teeth. Brother Yi is almost a cripple now. Why do you have to humiliate him like this? Xia Shir might lower her head in front of Xia Yubing, but Xia Yinger didn't have the qualifications to make her retreat. You're still calling him Brother Yi? In the Sword King's secret realm, he plotted against Sister Yubing and tried to obtain the inheritance. Such a selfish and treacherous person isn't worthy of being called Brother Yi. Xia Yinger sneered, not caring about exposing Yi Guchun's scars. Saying this, Xia Yinger deliberately glanced at Yi Guchun, hoping to see his flustered and exasperated appearance. However, what stunned Xia Yinger was that Yi Guchun didn't reveal a trace of anger. He didn't even have the intention to argue or defend himself. Xia Shir glanced at Yi Guchun. Seeing that Yi Guchun didn't refute, she sighed in her heart. Whether it was true or false, Xia Shir didn't want to know. I want this blood spirit vermilion fruit. Xia Shir didn't hesitate and snatched the fruit from Xia Yinger's hand. When Xia Yinger fought with Yi Guchun, her essence chi was unstable. Facing Xia Shir, who was at the same level as her, she was naturally at a disadvantage. Therefore, she didn't resist and only showed a look of resentment. Xia Shir, how long can you protect this guy? Brother Xia Yin is in seclusion and will soon break through to the 5th level of the essence chi stage. He has already said that in a month's time, he will personally defeat Yi Guchun and expel him from the Xia family. Xia Yinger said coldly. She glared fiercely at Yi Guchun and turned to leave. The surrounding Xia family disciples also shook their heads. Their eyes were filled with amusement and schadenfreude. The former leader of the 7 heavenly prides of the Sky River province, Yi Guchun of the Sword sect, had actually been reduced to the point where he was threatened by a 3rd-grade genius. Hey, take this blood spirit vermilion fruit. If you need anything else, I can help you, but... Xia Shir looked at Yi Guchun and hesitated for a moment before saying, if you want to live a peaceful life, leave the Xia family. If you need anything, I will try my best to satisfy you. Yi Guchun stretched out his hand to wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth, as he looked at the girl in green clothes in front of him. I will use my contribution points to exchange for this blood spirit vermilion fruit. Also, I do plan to leave the Xia family. This is also good. I can live the rest of my life in peace and obtain. Before Xia Shir could finish her sentence, Yi Guchun continued. However, I won't be driven out. I will walk out of here openly. After Yi Guchun finished speaking, he put away the spiritual herbs he had bought into his origin ring and walked out of the spiritual medicine hall. At the entrance of the spiritual medicine hall, Yi Guchun stopped in his tracks and said without looking back, Today, I owe you a favor. After saying this, he left. A favor? Xia Shir sighed and shook her head slightly. She did not care about Yi Guchun's favor. How could a person whose cultivation was crippled and stopped at the body refining realm have the confidence to promise a favor? Soon, Xia Shir put Yi Guchun's words to the back of her mind and began to focus on preparing for the skill sparring competition in a month's time. Yi Guchun returned to the desolate courtyard. As soon as he closed the door, his face flushed with a sickly red. Soon after, he spat out a mouthful of blood. The difference between our realms is so great. If I had not displayed the initial stage of the piercing moon swordsmanship, I might not have been able to hurt Xia Yinger. Yi Guchen sat cross-legged on his bed and began to regulate his breathing. However, if people knew that Yi Guchen had casually comprehended the initial stage of the piercing moon swordsmanship, it would definitely cause a storm. Any martial art was divided into 6 realms, according to one's understanding and comprehension: elementary, ascension, initial success, phenomenal success, consummation, and transcendent. At elementary, one could display 30% of the martial art's power. At advanced, one could display 50% of the power. At initial, one could display 70% of the power and fuse the moves into a small unique move. At greater, one could display the full power of the martial art and comprehend a killing move. At perfect, one had already comprehended the martial art to the extreme and achieved a qualitative change, multiplying the power. At transformative, it was the highest realm of the martial art. Perhaps only the creator of this martial art could reach this realm. At this realm, one could go beyond the martial art and create an ultimate move. Yi Guchen had the monstrous talent of the sword Dao that could be called abnormal by Duge Wu Bai. When he fought Xia Yinger, it was his first time using the piercing moon swordsmanship. He had only practiced it a few times in his mind. In just a few times, Yi Guchen had comprehended the initial stage of the piercing moon swordsmanship and derived a small unique move, meteor piercing moon swordsmanship. If this speed of comprehending the swordsmanship were to spread, it would definitely cause a huge uproar. However, there was another reason. The piercing moon swordsmanship was an unorthodox swordsmanship. If it was an innate or even a higher level of swordsmanship, even if Yi Guchen had a rare talent in the sword Dao, it would be impossible for him to comprehend it to the initial stage in such a short time. But even so, with just this level of comprehension, Yi Guchen was worthy of the title of Sword Master. My qi and blood were already depleted. In addition, the battle with Xia Yinger stimulated the qi and blood in my body. Now the situation is even worse. Yi Guchen frowned. It was never easy to challenge someone of a higher level. If Yi Guchen had not comprehended the piercing moon swordsmanship to the initial stage and stimulated the qi and blood in his body, as well as Xia Yinger underestimating him, he would not have been able to fight Xia Yinger to the point where both of them were injured. He took out the spiritual herbs that he had bought from the spiritual medicine hall. In addition to the blood spirit vermilion fruit, yang yuan grass, and pulse opening flower, he had also exchanged for many spiritual herbs that could strengthen qi and blood. He had to recuperate his body and increase his strength. Although Yi Guchen did not care much about fame and fortune, he did not want to be defeated by Xia Yan in a month's time and be banished from the Xia family like a dead dog. The sword meridians in his body were destroyed, his dantian was empty, and his qi essence was flowing out. Unless he had rare saint-grade pills or rare qi and blood techniques or secret techniques, it would be difficult to recover, let alone return to his previous cultivation. However, Yi Guchen was different. In his mind, other than the martial techniques of this world, there were also many ultimate techniques from the pugilistic world in his previous life. In Duge Wu Bai's memory, there were more than just sword techniques. Now Yi Guchen could only think of one technique: body metamorphosis scripture. It was rumored that it was created by one of the top 10 experts of the pugilistic world, Bodhidharma. It tempered the muscles, bones, and meridians, increased qi and blood, and opened up the meridians. Once cultivated to greater mastery, one's entire body's vital energy and blood would be like a dragon's. Their bones would be like a dragon's spine, and their tendons and meridians would be tough and firm. This body tempering technique was not inferior to some of the top-notch body tempering techniques in this world. With this technique and many spirit herbs, Yi Guchen believed that he could quickly fill up his qi and blood. Yi Guchen boiled the yang essence grass and some other spirit herbs into a medicinal soup. He then ground the meridian opening flower and a few other spirit herbs into powder and put them into the bathtub. Chapter 5. Yi Guchen clenched his fist. and the sound of bones cracking could be heard from his fingers. His entire body was moving like a huge dragon, constantly emitting vibrating and exploding sounds. After a quarter of an hour, the sound finally stopped. It seems that this body was indeed weak before, but now it has recovered a little, Yi Guchen thought to himself. The sound just now was the reconstruction of his bones and veins. The effect of the body metamorphose scripture had exceeded his expectations. It seemed that the various martial arts in his previous life were not useless in this world. On the contrary, they were even more valuable. After using the body metamorphose scripture to build a foundation, I'll cultivate the marrow cleansing scripture, and then go through the 9 tribulations Heart Sutra's blood tribulation. My body will reach an unimaginable level. Yi Guchen had a clear thought in his mind. His current cultivation was at the 5th layer of the body tempering realm, and he was far from returning to his previous realm. There were 4 major realms at the beginning of cultivation: body tempering realm, essence realm, chi refining realm, and divine soul realm. These 4 realms were collectively known as the 4 mortal exuberance realms. The 9th layer of the body tempering realm strengthened the body, increased the vitality, and extended the lifespan. The 9th layer of the essence realm transformed the vitality in the body into the essence realm. The 9th layer of the chi refining realm transformed the essence realm into true chi. The 9th layer of the chi refining realm refined the chi sea. The 9th layer of the divine soul realm nourished the divine soul and opened the sea of knowledge. Only by reaching this step could one truly transcend the mortal world and step into the divine soul realm. Almost all of the 7 heavenly prides of the Sky River province are experts at the 7th layer of the essence realm. That Xia Yubing is the same as me in the past, at the peak of the essence realm. Yi Guchen did not become complacent after breaking through 3 layers. He was still under great pressure. He might be able to rely on various factors to fight Xia Yinger, but if he were to face Xia Yin now, the outcome would be uncertain, let alone the other heavenly prides. It's impossible to get cultivation resources from the Xia family now. If I want spiritual herbs, I'll have to go to the Cloud Valley mountain range. Wait until my vitality is at its peak. Then I can try to pass the blood tribulation. At that time, my combat strength won't be inferior to an essence realm expert. Yi Guchen thought to himself as he walked out of the desolate courtyard. Along the way, Yi Guchen would occasionally meet the disdainful and mocking gazes of the Xia family disciples, but he chose to ignore them. When the competition began, everything would become clear. However, just as Yi Guchen was about to step out of the Xia family home, a violent tremor suddenly came from the deepest part of the qi-nurturing garden at the heart of the Xia family home. Faintly, there was a surge of yin energy surging out. It's Xia Yubing. Yi Guchen's sword-like eyebrows suddenly furrowed. Vaguely, there seemed to be an illusory river surging in the sky where the sound came from. It was not a real river, but sword energy. It's Miss Yubing. Is she about to come out? That's right. After all, he has been in seclusion for so long. However, the inheritance of the North River Sword King isn't that easy to cultivate. But it looks like Lady Yubing is about to break through to the Qi refining realm. TSK. If that's the case, she'll be the first of the 7 geniuses to break through to the Qi refining realm. What 7 geniuses? Did you count one too many? Ah haha, that's right. Yi Guchen is no longer counted. Hearing the discussions around him, Yi Guchen's expression did not change as he walked out. Sword intent, huh? Interesting. Yi Guchen's lips curled into a faint smile. The city where the Xia family lived was the most prosperous and central city of the Milky Way Prefecture, Shang River City. After leaving the Xia family home, Yi Guchen did not choose to go directly to the Cloud Valley mountain range. Instead, he went to another place, Heavenly Forging Pavilion. The Heavenly Forging Pavilion was a merchant that sold all kinds of treasures and weapons. It had branches in every prefecture in the Saint Origin dynasty. It could be said that it was one of the top powers in the Saint Origin dynasty. It was rich in resources and had many master blacksmiths and guests. The reason Yi Guchen came to the Heavenly Forging Pavilion was to choose a sword. Although his sword, the Soaring Cloud Sword, was a high-grade spiritual weapon, the Sword of Star Universe Sword Pavilion's Gu Xiaoyang was even rarer and stronger than a spiritual weapon. Although the soaring cloud sword was sturdy, it could not be compared to a spiritual weapon, even if it was a low-grade spiritual weapon. In his previous life, the sword demon had reached the realm of having a sword without a sword. However, with Yi Guchen's current cultivation, it was obvious that he was far from not needing a sword. With a suitable sword, it would be more convenient for him to train in the Cloud Valley mountain range. As soon as Yi Guchen entered the Heavenly Forging Pavilion, a beautiful waitress wearing a low-cut dress immediately came forward to receive him. I wonder what kind of spiritual weapon would you like to choose? We have thousands of weapons in the Heavenly Forging Pavilion, and they are all made by first-rate master blacksmiths. Sword. Young master is actually a sword cultivator. How amazing! The waitress's eyes were filled with admiration. As she approached, a fragrant wind blew. This was also a method to attract customers. Yi Guchen's expression did not change as he said, "Take out your best sword." After so many years of accumulation, although Yi Guchen's savings could not be considered rich, he was not a poor person. The waitress's beautiful eyes suddenly lit up as she hurriedly said, "Young master, please go to the second floor." Yi Guchen followed the waitress's guidance to the second floor. The number of spiritual weapons on this floor was obviously not as many as on the first floor, and most of them were placed in separate cabinets. "Young master, please allow me to introduce these 4 famous swords to you." The waitress brought Yi Guchen to a row of cabinets, where 4 swords were placed. Yi Guchen casually swept his gaze over, and secretly nodded in his heart. In his previous life, Yi Guchen had been immersed in the way of the sword for more than 40 years, so he had long understood the sword in his heart. These 4 famous swords, in the Jianghu of his previous life, were definitely the best of the best. But in this world, they could only be considered not bad. This sword is called Star Cleansing. The main material is Star Cloud Steel. The texture is hard, cleansing, and the guidance of energy is stable. The blade is sharp and can cut iron like mud. It has 4 vessel veins, and is a middle-grade spiritual weapon. The waitress pointed at a sharp sword. The body of the sword had star-like fragments of light, and the blade was as bright as snow. A middle-grade spiritual weapon, this sword was better than Xiaoyinger's Fire Cloud sword. At the same time, it also had 4 vessel veins, twice as many as the Fire Cloud sword. Yi Guchen knew about vessel veins. All spiritual weapons contain vessel veins, just like the veins of humans. The more vessel veins there were, the more power would be increased. It was already very good for a middle-grade spiritual weapon to have 4 vessel veins. This sword is called Broken Rainbow. The main material is red grain steel, supplemented by Skyfire stone and red mysterious crystal. Although it only has 3 vessel veins, after infusing it with essence qi and genuine qi, it can stimulate the power of fire. Its lethality is top-notch among middle-grade spiritual weapons. This sword is called Solitary Shadow. The main material is light wind steel and wind spirit iron essence. It has 6 vessel veins, which can increase the speed of the sword and make it as fast as lightning. It is a top-grade spiritual weapon. It is the proud work of the pavilion master of the Tianhe province branch, a 2-star forging master, Chu Nanchun. When talking about this sword, there was a trace of pride in the waitress's tone. Forging masters were also divided into ranks. The lowest was 1 star, and the highest was 9 stars. 2-star forging masters were already capable of forging top-grade spiritual weapons. As for supreme-grade spiritual weapons, only 3-star forging masters and above could do so. But even so, in the Tianhe province, a 2-star forging master's status was already very high. Yi Guchen pondered. Among the 4 swords, this Solitary Shadow was obviously the best. But for Yi Guchen, he still couldn't find a feeling. Yes, it was the feeling of a swordsman towards a sword. To be more vulgar, he didn't have any affinity with it. "May I ask if there are any other famous swords in the pavilion?" Yi Guchen asked again. "Hee young man, what big words. Could it be that you look down on this Solitary Shadow sword that this old man forged?" At this moment, an old man dressed in a black robe walked over. His wide palm was full of thick calluses, and he was spinning 3 stone walnuts. "Master Chu." The waitress hurriedly bowed. Yi Guchen stared. This old man was actually the pavilion master of the Heavenly Forging Pavilion branch, a 2-star forging master, Chu Nanshan. Moreover, looking at this person's aura, Yi Guchen knew that this Chu Nanshuan's cultivation was definitely not weak. He was definitely at the Qi refinement realm or above. I don't dare. This Yi has never said that this sword is not good. It's just that it might not be fated with us. Yi Guchen replied, neither servile nor overbearing. Yi Guchen, this old man is very curious. Your cultivation has been crippled, so why are you still here to choose a sword? Chu Nanshan revealed Yi Guchen's identity with a single sentence. What? He's the head of the 7 prides of the Heavenly River, the former young sword master, Yi Guchen. The waitress at the side suddenly cried out in alarm, and then hurriedly retreated a few steps. The flattery in her eyes disappeared, and was replaced by a faint suspicion and disgust. It was said that good things did not go out, but bad things spread for 1,000 miles. The waitress had naturally heard of some of the rumors about Yi Guchen's misdeeds. Yi Guchen couldn't be bothered with the waitress's attitude. This old man doesn't care about your business. As long as you can afford it. This old man still has a famous sword in this pavilion. Can you eat it? Chu Nanshan said. Pavilion's famous sword? Yi Guchen's eyes lit up. Follow me. Chu Nanshan waved his sleeve and led Yi Guchen to the 3rd floor. Chapter 6. On the 3rd floor of the Heavenly Forging Pavilion, compared to the 2nd floor, there were even fewer spirit artifacts. Yi Guchen casually glanced around and saw that there were only 4 spirit artifacts on the 3rd floor. Top-rank spirit artifact Burning Flame Saber. 13 artifact Meridians. Pouring true qi into it can trigger the explosive power of flames. Its power is astonishing. Top-rank spirit artifact Horn-on Spear. 14 artifact Meridians. The tip of the spear was forged from the venomous fangs of the heavenly horned python. If it causes a wound, one's blood and qi will collapse in 15 minutes. If it is not treated, one will die in a few days. Top-rank spirit artifact, Water-breaking Whip. As Yi Guchen looked, he could not help but nod his head. As expected of a top-rank spirit artifact, it was far from what an ordinary spirit artifact could compare to. However, what attracted Yi Guchen's attention the most was the sword placed in the middle of the 3rd floor. The shape of the sword was simple and natural. It was not gorgeous, and the hilt was even a little old. However, the body of the sword was covered with layers of lightning runes that were sparkling with a cold light. At the same time, Yi Guchen also saw that on the body of the sword, other than the lightning runes that were formed when it was forged, there were also some complicated runes that interweaved with each other. They seemed to be resonating with each other, and had an indescribable power. Could it be that this sword? Yi Guchen looked at Chu Nanshan. Yes, this is the sword of my Heavenly Forging Pavilion branch. The Spirit Inscription Divine Weapon, Tribulation Dust. Chu Nanshan said with a faint smile. Tribulation Dust. Yi Guchen looked at the end of the sword, and saw that there was indeed the word Tribulation Dust engraved on it. However, what Yi Guchen did not expect was that this sword was actually a Spirit Inscription Divine Weapon. The rarity of a Spirit Inscription Divine Weapon far exceeded that of a top-rank spirit artifact. It could be said that in the entire Milky Way province, there were not many people who could possess a Spirit Inscription Divine Weapon. Even the lowest grade Spirit Inscription Divine Weapon was far more powerful than a top-rank spirit artifact. The reason why a Spirit Inscription Divine Weapon is so powerful, other than having more artifact meridians than a top-rank spirit artifact, is that it has spirit inscriptions. Yi Guchen thought. This Calamity Dust sword was obtained by my Heavenly Forging Pavilion by chance. Although I don't know who the creator is, to be able to forge a Spirit Inscription Divine Armament, he must be at least a 4-star blacksmith. This sword uses the Baosteel forging technique. The blade is made of extremely hard Xianyuan iron, wrapped in the flexible 1000-fold steel. It can be said that it has both flexibility and sharpness. At the same time, it is mixed with meteoric iron. Chu Nanshan explained. Meteoric iron. Although Yi Guchen didn't know much about forging, he still knew about meteoric iron. This was an extremely rare treasure material, which was usually only used in the forging of divine weapons with spiritual inscriptions. Yes, now you know how valuable this sword is. At the same time, it also has 26 artifact veins and 2 spirit inscriptions. One is the Broken Edge spirit inscription, and the other is the Thunderstorm spirit inscription, Chu Nanchun said with a smile. But Yi Guchen felt that Chu Nanchun was like an old fox. Very quickly, Yi Guchen noticed that something was wrong with the Calamity Dust. Because on the Calamity Dust sword, the 2 spirit inscriptions were dim. At the same time, although the entire sword was like a pool of water, emitting a cold light, it seemed to have been heavily damaged like his soaring cloud sword. At least with the sword demon's understanding and familiarity with swords, this Calamity Dust sword must have been refurbished. Seeing that Yi Guchen's expression wasn't right, Chu Nanchuan's heart skipped a beat. As expected of a young sword master, although he didn't know how to forge, he could see the clues. Under Yi Guchen's questioning gaze, Chu Nanchun coughed dryly and said, "After I found this Calamity Dust sword, it was slightly damaged. I only repaired it slightly." Slightly damaged? Yi Guchen shook his head. How much could a merchant's words be trusted? Although Master Chu is a 2-star blacksmith, you don't have the ability to repair the spirit inscriptions. If the spirit inscriptions on this sword are useless, then it can't be called a spirit inscription divine weapon, Yi Guchen muttered. Even so, this sword is a spirit inscription divine weapon after all. It has 26 spirit inscription veins, and its value far surpasses that of a supreme-grade spirit weapon. Therefore, my heavenly forging pavilion set the price at 5,000 crystal jades. Chu Nanchun said. 5,000 crystal jades? Yi Guchen frowned. Crystal jades were the common currency among cultivators. They contain the spirit chi of heaven and earth, and could be used for cultivation. Yi Guchen had accumulated some over the years, but he only had 2,000 crystal jades. The price of a supreme-grade spirit weapon was at most 2,000 crystal jades. Is Master Chu's price too high? Yi Guchen asked. If you think it's too expensive, then choose another spirit weapon. Chu Nanchun didn't want to waste his breath on Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen frowned slightly. After seeing Jie Chen, he really didn't care about the 4 famous swords from before. Just when the atmosphere was a little awkward, the sound of light footsteps suddenly came from the stairs. Yi Guchen turned his head and saw a graceful young girl in a green dress. Her eyes were like autumn water, and her face was like a jade plate. She was beautiful and elegant. It was her. Yi Guchen was not unfamiliar with this young girl, because she was one of the 7 geniuses of the Sky River province like him. She was ranked last and her name was Chu Shiqing. "Miss, why are you here?" Chu Nanchun saw Chu Shiqing and hurried forward. He valued Chu Shiqing so much not only because she was a genius, but also because she was the daughter of the Heavenly Forging Pavilion's Great Pavilion Master. The Great Pavilion Master was a peak 3-star blacksmith who had almost forged a spirit inscription divine weapon. He enjoyed a high status in the entire Saint Origin dynasty. As for Chu Shiqing, she had completely inherited her father's talent in forging. However, it was also because of this that her cultivation was slightly slower than the other prodigies. Yi Guchen focused his gaze and saw that Chu Shiqing's cultivation was almost at level 7 of the Origin Essence realm. Among the 7 geniuses of the Sky River province, Yi Guchen was ranked at the bottom. In the eyes of outsiders, Yi Guchen didn't even deserve to be ranked among the geniuses. Yi Guchen. Chu Shiqing glanced at Yi Guchen, but there wasn't any disdain or disgust in her eyes. Although she didn't have a close relationship with Yi Guchen, they had discussed the art of forging swords together. However, after what happened to Yi Guchen, the interaction between the two of them was cut off. Chu Nanchun told Chu Shiqing about Yi Guchen's intention to buy the sword. After Chu Shiqing heard it, she pondered for a moment before saying, "Yi Guchen, do you want this Calamity Dust sword? Although there are many famous swords in the entire Heavenly Forging Pavilion, I only like Calamity Dust," Yi Guchen said indifferently. Chu Shiqing glanced at Yi Guchen. She didn't know why, but the Yi Guchen in front of her gave her a strange feeling. It was as if his personality was a completely different person. "I'm sorry. Although I'm the young miss of the Heavenly Forging Pavilion, I can't interfere with daily affairs. After all, 5,000 crystal jades isn't a small amount. I see. Yi Guchen nodded and didn't insist. If they weren't fated, they could only give up for now. Just as Yi Guchen was about to leave the heavenly forging pavilion, Chu Shiqing seemed to have thought of something and suddenly said, "Do you really want this calamity dust sword?" Yi Guchen frowned slightly and said, "Of course. All right, although I can't directly sell this calamity dust sword to you at a low price, I have one thing here. As long as you are willing to help, you can temporarily pay 2,000 crystal jades as a deposit and take the calamity dust sword away. However, you have to make up for the 3,000 crystal jades within a month. If you are late, you will increase it by 100 crystal jades a day." Chu Shiqing said. "Miss." Chu Nanchun wanted to say something but hesitated. But since Chu Shiqing had spoken, he couldn't interrupt. "Oh, what do you need my help with?" Yi Guchen slightly raised his eyebrows. The Horsehoof Valley, near the Cloud Valley mountain range, was originally a desolate place. Not long ago, a prospecting disciple of my heavenly forging pavilion accidentally unearthed a crystal jade vein in the valley. Chu Shiqing said in a low voice. Crystal jade vein. Yi Guchen was slightly surprised. The value of a crystal jade vein was obvious. It was an irresistible temptation to any force. Yes, not only does it have a large amount of crystal jades, it also has many rare ores that can be used to forge. However, that vein was later discovered by the Bei and Wang families at the same time. Chu Shiqing said with a hint of unwillingness in her eyes. Although the heavenly forging pavilion was powerful, it was only a branch pavilion after all. The Bei and Wang families were both part of the 5 great families of the Milky Way province, and were local tyrants. If they were forced into a corner and destroyed the crystal jade vein, none of the 3 great forces would benefit. Moreover, the most important thing was that in the heavenly forging pavilion, the Grand Pavilion Master only represented his faction. There was also the Second Pavilion Master, and the Third Pavilion Master. If these 2 factions knew about it and seized the crystal jade vein, it wouldn't be good for Chu Shiqing and her father. So, Yi Guchen asked. The 3 forces can't start a war directly, so they agreed that in 2 months, the younger generation of the Horsehoof Valley will fight. The winner will obtain the mining rights of the crystal jade vein. Chu Shiqing said, "Miss, forgive this old man for saying this, but it's useless for you to tell Yi Guchen about this. Although he was once the young sword master and the leader of the 7 great prodigies now, although Chu Nanchun didn't say it out loud, his meaning was clear. Yi Guchen was too weak." Chu Shiqing sighed slightly and said, "Although I'm also one of the 7 great prodigies of the Milky Way province, my talent isn't in fighting but in forging. So, as for the other prodigies, most of them have their own factions. Even the 1 or 2 lone wolves can't be found now." "Okay." Yi Guchen nodded without hesitation. Kid, this old man advises you not to overestimate yourself. If you deceive my miss." Chu Nanchuan's face was somewhat gloomy. "If I can't win, I'm willing to return the calamity dust sword with both hands and pay 5,000 crystal jades." Yi Guchen said casually. When he said this, Chu Shiqing, Chu Nanchun, and the female attendant were all somewhat shocked. If it was the young sword master of the past, it would be understandable for him to have such confidence. But now, Yi Guchen's innate sword embryo had been taken away, his sword vein destroyed, and his cultivation dropped to the body-tempering realm. What confidence did he have to say such words? "Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue when you talk big?" Even the female attendant sneered softly. "All right, we'll do as you say." Chu Shiqing nodded slightly. Regardless of whether she succeeded or not, she wouldn't lose out in this deal. Moreover, Chu Shiqing didn't have no backup plans. When the time came, apart from Yi Guchen, she would naturally try her best to find young experts to join. Yi Guchen's finger swiped across his origin ring, and the 2,000 crystal jades were transferred into Chu Nanchuan's origin ring. Naturally, he also obtained the tribulation dust. "Farewell." Yi Guchen cupped his hands and left with a flick of his sleeves. "Miss, are you really placing your hopes on this kid?" Chu Nanchun asked. "You're doubtful because you haven't seen how he defeated the 5 great sword geniuses with 1 sword," when he fought for the title of young sword master. Unfortunately, if he didn't encounter such a thing. Chu Shiqing shook her head slightly. Miss, are you saying that the rumors in the Sword King mystery realm are false? Chu Nanshun asked. Who knows? But no matter what, after that incident, Xia Yubing will probably take over Yi Guqin and become the leader of the 7 great geniuses of the Sky River province, Chu Shiqing said in a deep voice. After all, the North River Sword King Chu Donglio's inheritance was too terrifying. Chapter 7. After leaving the Heavenly Forging Pavilion, Yi Guqin went to the busiest market in Shang River City. Other than buying some ordinary healing pills, he also bought a black mask and a black robe. After all, Yi Guqin died because he was ambushed by Bei Dangui, one of the 7 prodigies. Although Yi Guqin had the talent of the sword demon and his understanding of the way of the sword, his cultivation was far inferior to the other prodigies. He was like a 3-year-old child who had reached the peak of martial arts, but no strength. He could not beat a strong man who only had brute force. Although sword skills were important, cultivation was equally important. Once I reached the peak of the body refinement realm and the body metamorphosis scripture, I will be able to compete with an expert of the essence realm. Yi Guqin decided that he had to make a breakthrough in this trip to the Cloud Valley mountain range. The Cloud Valley mountain range was located at the intersection of the Milky Way Prefecture, Yuanyang Prefecture, and Beichun Prefecture. It was a vast mountain range. There were many ferocious beasts roaming around the periphery of the mountain range. Demonic beasts roamed around the center of the mountain range. As for the inner part of the mountain range, it was rarely visited by humans. It was a dangerous place with only a slim chance of survival. Yi Guqin rented a scarlet Qilin horse that could travel 1,000 miles in a day, and soon arrived at the periphery of the Cloud Valley mountain range. Cultivators and martial artists came to the Cloud Valley mountain range to train all year round. Naturally, it formed a circle around the periphery of the mountain range. In the market, there were many beast hunting squads recruiting people. These beast hunting squads were mostly experienced and knew where there were spiritual herbs and demonic beasts. Yi Guqin thought for a moment, put on the black mask, and went to a beast hunting squad. This beast hunting squad was called Qi Yen, and they were recruiting people. Yi Guqin went up, and after a simple introduction he joined them. Big brother Shanmu. That kid is only at the 5th level of the body refinement realm. He will only be a burden if we pull him in. A pretty girl with short red hair and wearing leather armor complained. We can't recruit anyone. We will recruit as many as we can. The strong man called Shanmu said, Hey sneaky brat, my big brother Shanmu is an Essence Origin 3rd stage expert. If you don't want to lose your life in the Cloud Valley mountain range, you'd better follow closely. The short-haired girl, Suya, coldly snorted. Yi Guqin smiled indifferently and ignored him. The outer regions of the Cloud Valley mountain range were considered safer than the inner regions of the central regions, but that was only in comparison. An Essence Realm expert might be able to handle the outer perimeter with ease, but a body-tempering realm expert would face the risk of death. This was also the reason why Suya disliked Yi Guqin so much. There were 11 people in the Red Flame hunting team, including Yi Guqin. Except for Yi Guqin and a warrior who was good at scouting, the rest were all Essence Origin realm experts. Be careful, it's a cyan-scaled leopard. The martial artist in charge of the investigation shouted in a low voice. Everyone in the Flaming Red squad immediately perked up. Roar! A group of Viridian leopards flashed through the jungle, and then pounced on the Flaming Red squad. Kill! Shanmu roared. He raised his pitch-black sword and slashed at a green-scaled leopard. Suya was also quite experienced. Without the slightest fear, she picked up the crescent moon dagger and rushed forward. Yi Guqin was the only one who remained where he was, humph as timid as a mouse. Suya caught a glimpse of Yi Guqin from the corner of her eye, and thought he was scared silly. Viridian leopard, an unranked fierce beast, but its speed is fast. It can be used to hone a fast sword. Yi Guqin secretly thought. Yi Guqin's purpose in coming to the Cloud Valley mountain range, in addition to finding qi and blood spirit herbs, was mainly to hone his swordsmanship. With the combat experience of Sword Demon, Yi Guchen's swordsmanship was actually not bad. The only thing lacking was the degree of running in with his body. Roar. At this moment, a Viridian leopard seemed to have found Yi Guchen alone. In its eyes, he was already fresh and delicious food. It could not help but pounce on Yi Guchen. Little brother, be careful. Shanmu saw this and shouted. However, he was too far away and could not do anything. Humph, I'm afraid he's scared silly. Suya was fighting with a Viridian leopard, but she was watching Yi Guchen from the corner of her eye. She had no intention of saving Yi Guchen, even though she was the closest to Yi Guchen. The biggest difference between the swordsmanship of my previous life and the swordsmanship of this life is the use of chi essence. In my previous life, I used inner strength. They are not the same. Facing the Viridian leopard's attack, Yi Guchen acted as if he did not hear it. Weaklings should not come to the Cloud Valley mountain range. They are just throwing their lives away. Suya shook her head. Just when everyone thought Yi Guchen was about to die, Yi Guchen finally moved. The vitality ring on his finger flashed. One sword. It was just a single sword strike. Like a flash of light, the sharp edge of the sword cut through the air and passed through the neck of the Viridian leopard, as if it was cutting paper. The sword flashed. Yi Guchen, holding the tribulation dust in his hand, frowned and was still thinking. The air seemed to be frozen. Poochie. The next moment, the head of the Viridian leopard fell down, and the cut on its neck was as smooth as a mirror. Hiss! The surrounding flaming red squad martial artists were all shocked in their hearts. To be honest, the Viridian leopard was indeed not a monster beast. It was just an ordinary fierce beast. But even so, with its speed, even an ordinary profound origin realm warrior would have to spend a lot of effort to kill it. However, Yi Guchen, who was only at the 5th level of the body refining realm, actually killed a Viridian leopard with one sword. Shanmu's pupil shrank. He asked himself, if that sword had been aimed at him, he could not guarantee that he could have taken it. Because it was too fast. It was too fast to be seen with the naked eye. As for Suya, her round little mouth was agape, and the shock in her heart did not dissipate for a long time. After this, several more Viridian leopards pounced on Yi Guchen, but without exception, they were all beheaded by Yi Guchen with one sword. Not long after, the whole group of Viridian leopards was wiped out, and the ground was covered in blood. This kind of bloody smell was the easiest to attract fierce beasts. If one was unlucky, even some low-level monsters might be attracted. Let's leave quickly. Shanmu waved his hand and called for the flaming red squad to leave. After getting a safe place, Shanmu and the others rested on the spot and looked at Yi Guchen. Little brother, you really don't show off. Although your cultivation is only at the 5th level of the body refining realm, your strength is not weaker than us profound origin realm warriors. Shanmu looked at Yi Guchen and smiled. On the side, Suya's face was also a little hot. After all, she had ridiculed Yi Guchen along the way, but she could imagine that facing Yi Guchen's swift sword, Suya knew that it would be difficult for her to withstand it. At this moment, she looked at Yi Guchen with less disdain and more curiosity. It's just an insignificant trick, not enough to reach the apex. Yi Guchen waved his hand and did not want to say anything more. After a long while, Shanmu seemed to have made up his mind. He looked at Yi Guchen and said, Little brother, do you know what our Flaming Red Squad's mission is in the Cloud Valley mountain range this time? Mission? Yi Guchen was puzzled. Little brother, don't tell me you don't know about the recent news in the Cloud Valley mountain range? Shanmu asked back. What news? Yi Guchen was confused. Suya suddenly interjected. Of course it's about the dragon blood transformation fruit appearing in the central region of the Cloud Valley mountain range. Dragon blood transformation fruit. Yi Guchen's eyes suddenly narrowed. He knew about the dragon blood transformation fruit. It was an upper-grade spirit medicine. Rumor had it that it contained a trace of dragon chi and vigorous life essence. Its value was far greater than the blood spirit vermilion fruit that Yi Guchen had refined before. A dragon blood transformation fruit was probably worth more than 1,000 crystal jades. The appearance of the dragon blood transformation fruit has attracted the attention of various experts. Those young experts are also willing to hire us to pay attention to the movement of the dragon blood transformation fruit and pass the news to them as soon as possible, Shanmu said. So you were hired? Yi Guchen asked. Yes, the one who hired us is Princess Yuanyang of Yuanyang Prefecture. Princess Yuanyang is determined to get the dragon blood transformation fruit, Shanmu said. It was her? Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows. He did not expect to meet the person who said she wanted to take him as a sword attendant so soon. Of course, in addition to Princess Yuanyang, I heard that the Bei family and Wang family of Tianhe Prefecture and the Situ family of Beichen Prefecture have all sent young experts to compete for the dragon blood transformation fruit. Bei family, Wang family. Yi Guchen's black eyes narrowed slightly. He was familiar with the Bei family. Bei Dangui was the most famous genius of the Bei family. He was also the one who framed Yi Guchen and killed him. The Wang family, like the Bei family and the Xia family, was one of the 5 aristocratic families of Tianhe Prefecture. As for the Situ family of Beichen Prefecture, although Yi Guchen did not know much about them, he believed that they were not weaker than the 5 aristocratic families of Tianhe Prefecture. Yi Guchen guessed that the geniuses might not show up to compete for the dragon blood transformation fruit this time. But the geniuses who were only second to the geniuses would definitely come. For example, Princess Yuanyang was a rank 4 genius. Then why don't they compete directly, but hire a hunting team to pay attention to it? Yi Guchen asked. Little brother, you may not know, but all the treasures of heaven and earth are guarded by demonic beasts. The one who occupies the dragon blood transformation fruit is said to be a terrifying demonic beast that is about to transform into a flood dragon, the golden-eyed horned dragon python. Shanmu answered. A rank 3 demonic beast. Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows. Demonic beasts like the green-scaled leopard were only considered acquired demonic beasts. Only demonic beasts that breathed in the spiritual chi of heaven and earth could enter the Khanate realm and condense a monster core in their body to transform into a demonic beast. The strength of demonic beasts was divided into 9 ranks, from the lowest to the highest. Even an ordinary chi refining grandmaster would find it difficult to face a rank 3 demonic beast head-on. This golden-eyed horned dragon python is too difficult to deal with. Only when it enters the flood dragon transformation stage and begins to transform can it be killed. Only then will we have a chance to compete for the dragon blood transformation fruit. Shanmu explained. I see. Yi Guchen nodded slightly. He was determined to get the dragon blood transformation fruit. Chapter 8. For the next few days, the Red Flame hunting team and Yi Guchen hunted fierce beasts in the periphery of the Cloud Valley Mountains. During these days, the hunting team also killed 2 rank 1 demonic beasts. Demonic beasts were much more valuable than fierce beasts. Yi Guchen, on the other hand, was honing his swordsmanship through repeated battles. His strength was divided into 2 types. One was the martial arts mental cultivation method of the sword demon Dugu Wubai in his previous life. The other was Yi Guchen's original swordsmanship cultivation method. During this period of time, Yi Guchen also made a summary of his own strength. Yi Guchen originally practiced the innumerable sword techniques, a spiritual level cultivation method, and the boundless heaven sword art, a middle-class spiritual level swordsmanship passed to him by his father. But the spiritual level swordsmanship was much more difficult to practice than the Xiantian sword art. Even Yi Guchen in the past had only reached the beginner level and was far from proficient. After the boundless heaven sword art, it was the Aurora Fast Sword. The Aurora Fast Sword was also one of the 3 Xiantian sword arts of the Xia family. It was on par with the Thousand Shadows sword art and the Frost sword technique. Yi Guchen had practiced this swordsmanship to the basic level and could exert 70% of its power. He also comprehended the unique skill, Aurora's Passing. After this swordsmanship, there were various acquired swordsmanship, as well as ungraded swordsmanship, such as the Piercing Moon swordsmanship. As for the sword demon's original martial arts mental cultivation method, the muscle bone strengthening scripture was needless to say. After that, he would also practice the marrow cleansing scripture. In addition, There were many other swordsmanship and body movements such as willow wind. Of course, the most important cultivation method was the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. When he got the dragon blood transforming fruit, Yi Guchen planned to go through the first minor tribulation of the blood tribulation. A few days later, the Red Flame hunting team, where Yi Guchen was, gradually went deep into the central area of the Cloud Valley Mountains. The location of the dragon blood transforming fruit was a place called Moon Bay Lake in the central area. Brothers, be careful. The central area is different from the periphery. Even warriors in the essence realm are at risk of death. Shan Mu reminded them in a low voice. Everyone nodded slightly. Yi Guchen was at the back of the group. During this period of time, his body and swordsmanship had already reached a very proficient level. The boundless heaven sword art of the spiritual level sword art had reached a higher level and could exert 50% of its power. Don't think that this speed was slow. It should be known that there was a huge difference between the difficulty and power of a spiritual level sword art and the unorthodox piercing moon sword art. The moon shooting meteor piercing moon sword art of moon sword art of meteor piercing moon sword art. Sword Mu was sword days of the martial days were days was sword sword art ahead of the level of the heaven level of the battle sword days times sword of skills of sword of martial of. As for the 9 Dugu swords of the sword demon in his previous life, Yi Guchen was still unable to practice it with his current physical condition. However, Yi Guchen was confident that the 9 swords of Dugu that he had created in his previous life would not be weaker than the emperor-level sword arts of this world. This was the confidence of Dugu Wubai, the sword demon. Another day passed, and the flaming red hunting team approached the Moon Bay Lake. Under the cover of the dense forest, a lake was hidden in the valley, shaped like a crescent moon. The surface of the lake was calm and tranquil, like an azure mirror. Yi Guchen looked over and saw that in the deepest part of the Moon Bay Lake, between the crevices of the valley, there was a small tree about the height of a person. The shape of this tree was strange. It was like a winding dragon's body. The bark was like dragon scales, and on the branches, there were 5 blood-red fruits. This fruit was also very strange. Its surface seemed to have dragon scales, and it was overflowing with traces of life essence. That is the dragon blood transforming fruit. Yi Guchen's eyes were fixed. The golden eye-horned dragon python should be hiding at the bottom of the lake. It will not be long before it enters the dragon transformation stage. Once there is movement, we can call Princess Yuanyang to come here. Shan Mu whispered. Yi Guchen frowned. His intuition was very keen. He could feel that there were some hidden auras around the Moon Bay Lake. They must be the hunting teams hired by other families. It will not be easy to get the dragon blood transforming fruit. Yi Guchen thought secretly. This quiet wait lasted for a full day. A day later, the originally tranquil Moon Bay Lake suddenly began to shake violently. The calm surface of the lake trembled like the surface of a drum. Vaguely, there seemed to be painful roars coming from the bottom of the lake. Time's up. Seeing this, Shan Mu suddenly took out a jade slip from his origin ring and crushed it. At the same time, the other teams also hurriedly took out their communication jade slips and crushed them. Roar! An extremely violent roar shook the entire secluded valley, and the entire valley was buzzing and vibrating. Then, under the horrified eyes of the other teams, an extremely ferocious demonic beast broke through the water surface and soared into the air. Yi Guchen's pupil shrank. In his previous life, he had never seen such a demonic beast. The golden eye-horned dragon python in front of him was more than 10 meters long. Its body was densely covered with black python scales and golden lines. On the ferocious python's head, there was a jade-like curved horn, like a dragon's horn. The golden beast eyes were filled with madness and brutality. The golden eye-horned dragon python in the dragon transformation stage was the weakest, but its temperament was also the most ferocious. This aura is too terrifying. Ordinary warriors in the profound origin stage, like us, will be killed in one move. Even Shan Mu, who had been through a lot of training, was frightened at this moment. As for Suya, Her legs were trembling, and she was a little scared. This was the ferocious power of a rank 3 demonic beast. Even an ordinary chi refining grandmaster would find it difficult to confront it head-on. Under the watchful eyes of the other teams, the golden-eye horned dragon python was surging with demonic aura and moving in the air. Vaguely, a crack could be seen spreading on the surface of its body. It's starting. Everyone's eyes were fixed on this ferocious demonic beast. The golden-eye horned dragon python squeezed out all the demonic aura in its body and began to shed its skin to break through to a higher level. This process lasted for 2 hours. As time passed, even Yiguchin and the others could feel that the vitality of the golden-eye horned dragon python was decreasing, and its demonic aura was not as strong as before. Is it going to fail? Shanmu and the others were puzzled. Roar! The golden-eyed horned dragon python let out an unwilling roar. Its huge python body moved and charged toward the dragon blood transformation fruit. Not good. That evil creature wants to eat the dragon blood transformation fruit. Several small teams cried out in alarm. If the dragon blood transformation fruit was eaten by the golden-eye horned dragon python, their reward would be wasted. Humph, what a rank 3 demonic beast. Suddenly, right at this moment, a crimson-red flowing light tore through the sky like heavenly flames, and it assaulted the golden-eyed horned dragon python. Those geniuses are here. Some people in the hunting team exclaimed. Yiguchin also focused his eyes. That streak of red light was a long sword that was completely red and emitted red flames. On the sword, there were 13 red meridians that emitted a dazzling light. That's Princess Yuanyang's sword. It's a supreme-grade spiritual weapon, Red Phoenix. Yiguchin knew a little about Princess Yuanyang. The Red Phoenix sword hit the golden-eye horned dragon python's body and emitted a sound of metal clashing. Then it was instantly sent flying, as expected of a rank 3 demonic beast. A beautiful figure caught the Red Phoenix sword that was sent flying and landed on the ground. It was a girl of about 15 or 16 years old. The girl was wearing a luxurious dress. Her skin was whiter than snow and her figure was graceful. She had an oval face and a pair of red phoenix eyes that were extremely seductive. However, there was a hint of arrogance at the corner of her bright red lips. This Princess Yuanyang was the daughter of the Yuanyang Mansion's mansion master. Shortly after Princess Yuanyang appeared, another 2 streaks of light flew over. They were 2 young men. Yiguchin was familiar with these 2 people. They were from the Bei family and the Wang family. They were rank 4 geniuses, second only to the Sky Prides. Bei family Bei Ling, Wang family Wang Zhan. As for Bei Ling, Yiguchin had a murderous intent in his heart, because he was Bei Donggui's younger brother. Bei Dongui framed Yiguchin and caused his death. In Yiguchin's opinion, the entire Bei family was his target. Haha. So Princess Yuanyang is also coveting the dragon blood transformation fruit. Bei Ling, who was dressed in green, looked at the ferociously roaring golden-eyed horned dragon python without any fear in his eyes. Since you're here, why don't you attack and kill this demonic beast first? Princess Yuanyang snorted coldly. It was obvious that she did not want to say anything more to Bei Ling. I heard that Princess Yuanyang is going to take Yiguchin as your sword servant soon. In my opinion, what's the use of taking in a useless person? Bei Ling sneered. It's none of your business. This is my business. Also, warn Bei Dongui that if he dares to play tricks again, don't blame me for being merciless. Princess Yuanyang shouted coldly. Bei Ling's eyes flashed with a hint of darkness. The corner of his mouth curled up into a cold smile, and he did not say anything more. At this moment, another beautiful figure flew over. It was a girl in a light yellow dress. Her body was also surging with the powerful aura of the refined origin realm. Beichen Mansion Sitter family? Wang Zhan, who was dressed in black, frowned. I'm Sita Ling. I believe the 3 of you are the young geniuses from Yuanyang Mansion and Milky Way Mansion. However, shouldn't we get rid of this demonic beast first? Sita Ling said in a light voice. Hearing Sita Ling's words, Princess Yuanyang and the other 2 had no choice but to work together even though they did not like each other. They were all people who were second only to the Heaven's Prides. Their cultivations were all above the 5th level of the refined origin realm. However, it was still difficult for them to fight against the golden-eyed horned dragon python. Since all of you want the dragon blood transformation fruit, I believe that all of you have already made your preparations. You can use all of your methods now, Sitaling said, and took out a jade strip. In the next moment, Sitaling crushed the jade strip. Waves of vigorous true qi suddenly burst out from the jade strip. They turned into streams of true qi and wrapped around the golden-eyed horned dragon python. A technique condensed by a peak qi refinement realm master, Bei Ling thought to himself when he saw this. The three of them did not hold back. Bei Ling took out a pitch-black pearl. It was the Bei family's most famous killing weapon, the Heavenly Fire Thunderbolt. It was rumored that a single Heavenly Fire Thunderbolt could severely injure an ordinary qi refinement realm master. Wang Zhan also took out a crimson blood talisman, and also released a powerful technique of a peak qi refinement realm master. Princess Yuanyang, on the other hand, took out a talisman and shot out an extremely powerful divine light. This was a life-saving item given to her by her father, the Destruction Jade Talisman. Under the combined attacks of the four young experts, the golden-eyed horned dragon python's body was blasted into several bloody holes. Originally, with the defensive power of the golden-eyed horned dragon python's scales, even an ordinary qi refinement realm master would not be able to break through its defense with a full force attack. However, the golden-eyed horned dragon python was in the flood dragon transformation stage. Most of its scales had disappeared, and its defensive power was greatly reduced. In addition, most of its demonic energy had been used up. Its combat power was much weaker than an ordinary rank 3 demonic beast. This was why it was fatally injured. Go! Almost without any hesitation, the four young experts attacked at almost the same time. They ignored the heavily injured golden-eyed horned dragon python and rushed toward the dragon blood transformation fruit. Even a rank 3 demonic beast is nothing. Huh? Seeing this, Yi Guchen's eyes flashed, and he quietly dived into the lake. Chapter 9. Yi Guchen was not in a hurry to fight for the dragon blood transformation fruit, because he knew that the four experts were restricting each other. It was impossible for them to decide who would get the dragon blood transformation fruit soon. The rank 3 demonic beast's entire body was a treasure. Although it could not be compared to the dragon blood transformation fruit, its value was not low either. Yi Guchen had to return the 3,000 crystal jades to the Heavenly Forging Pavilion within a month, so he could not miss out on anything valuable. Although they were underwater, the qi concealment technique was the most basic technique, so Yi Guchen naturally knew it too. Soon, he saw the huge body of the golden-eye horned dragon python struggling at the bottom of the lake. It's not completely dead yet. Yi Guchen took out the Tribulation Dust and channeled all his qi and blood into the Tribulation Dust sword. In an instant, on the body of the Calamity Dust sword, there were a total of 7 shining meridians snaking out. With Yi Guchen's current qi and blood, he could only light up 7 vessel meridians. As for the 2 spiritual inscriptions, they had been worn out by more than half, and could not be used again unless he found a blacksmith master who could repair them. With the support of the 7 vessel meridians, the Tribulation Dust sword's edge emitted a sharp sword qi. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed as he slashed his sword across the water, forming a vacuum in a short period of time. Accompanying the slash was an extremely bright ray of light, like the aurora in the sky. Aurora Quicksword's unique skill, Aurora's Passing. The unique skill of the Xiantian sword art was executed with the sword demon's comprehension of the sword Dao. Its power far exceeded its original power. With a flash of light, the horn on the golden-eye horned dragon python's head was chopped off in an instant. Yi Guchen moved and kept the broken horn in his origin ring. The horn contained most of the golden-eye horned dragon python's life essence. After losing the horn, the originally weak golden-eye horned dragon python struggled even more crazily, as if it was the final radiance of the setting sun. Yi Guchen executed the Willow Catkin Wind movement technique, and nimbly dodged the golden-eye horned dragon python's body in the water. Boundless Heaven Sword Art. Yi Guchen changed his swordsmanship again. This time, he performed the Boundless Heaven Swordsmanship, which his father had taught him since he was a child. As soon as the sword technique was used, the entire bottom of the lake seemed to be boiling. The undercurrent surged like a whirlpool. The Boundless Heaven sword art performed with the Calamity Dust sword was even more terrifying. The sword shadows seemed to interweave with the trajectory of the Boundless Heaven world. They intertwined with each other and formed an airtight formation. It was a complete encirclement sword art. The great wide world encompassed all living things. This was the essence of the Boundless Heaven sword art. With Sword Demon's understanding of swordsmanship, he immediately grasped the essence of this level. It won't take long for me to comprehend the Boundless Heaven sword art to the basic level. When I comprehend the unique skill, I will definitely be able to compete with those geniuses. Yi Guchen thought to himself. Every time he performed the Boundless Heaven sword art, his understanding of swordsmanship would deepen. This was also why the Sword Demon's perception was so terrifying. Under the encirclement of the Boundless Heaven sword art, the golden-eyed horned dragon python's body was covered with sword wounds. Finally, it died of exhaustion. Yi Guchen's Calamity Dust sword swept across the golden-eyed horned dragon python's head. A scarlet monster core with wisps of chi and blood fell into Yi Guchen's hand. On the surface of the scarlet monster core, there were faint traces of golden lines. If it succeeds in transforming into a flood dragon, this golden-eyed horned dragon python may really become a rank 4 demonic beast. Yi Guchen thought to himself. A rank 4 demonic beast was comparable to a human being at the peak of the Divine Soul realm. It was even possible for it to surpass the Divine Soul realm. The value of this monster core was far beyond that of an ordinary rank 3 monster core. I wonder how the battle above is going. After obtaining the golden-eyed horned dragon python's most precious horn and monster core, Yi Guchen did not stay any longer and broke through the water surface. At this moment, the sound of fighting was deafening in the deep valley. Yi Guchen looked over and saw that not only were Princess Yuanyang and the others fighting against each other, but even the Flaming Red hunting team was fighting against some other teams. As expected, the current situation was not out of Yi Guchen's expectations. Although there were 5 dragon blood transforming fruits, Princess Yuanyang and the others obviously did not want to share them equally. They all wanted to monopolize the 5 fruits. The 4 of them had similar strength, so they were in a stalemate. Therefore, they let the hunting team under their command attack to see if they could get the fruits and leave first. Green Wolf hunting team, quickly get the dragon blood transforming fruits, and then meet at the agreed place. Bei Ling shouted loudly. Don't even think about it. Flaming Red hunting team, stop them. Princess Yuanyang's profound chi burst out. The Scarlet Phoenix sword was like a fiery bird that kept shuttling back and forth, entangling Bei Ling, Shan Mu and the others, having received Princess Yuanyang's order, naturally tried their best to stop the Green Wolf hunting team. Humph, Shan Mu. You think you can stop me? Fong Lang, the leader of the Green Wolf hunting team, snorted coldly. His profound chi burst out and reached the 4th level of the profound chi realm. When did you break through? Shan Mu was surprised. His cultivation was only at the 3rd level of the profound chi realm. Although there was not as big a gap as crossing realms, there was still an obvious difference in strength between 2 small levels of the same realm. Although it was only 1 level of difference, it was enough for Fong Lang to suppress Shan Mu. As long as you are dead, no one can stop my Green Wolf hunting team from getting the dragon blood transforming fruits. Fong Lang burst out his profound chi and performed his trump card. Demon Wolf's Bite. Fong Lang threw out a punch. His profound chi burst out. Vaguely, the wind from his fist seemed to carry the roar of a demon wolf as he punched towards Shan Mu. Oh no! Shan Mu shouted in a low voice. He also operated his profound chi to the extreme and blocked with his arms. Boom! With a roar accompanied by the sound of bones breaking, Shan Mu was blown away by Fong Lang. Blood gushed out of his mouth, and his arm bones were all broken. Brother Shan Mu! Suya exclaimed. Seeing this, the rest of the Flaming Red squad also felt their hearts sink. Haha trash! Fong Lang glanced at Shan Mu and punched again to end Shan Mu's life. Bei Ling, who was fighting with Princess Yuanyang, was secretly delighted when he saw this. Princess Yuanyang, it would be impolite of me to refuse this dragon blood transforming fruit. Bei Ling smiled proudly. This dragon blood transforming fruit was not only for him, but also for his brother, Bei Dangue, to break through to the next realm. Among the 7 geniuses of the Milky Way province, whoever could break through to the Qi refining realm first, after Yi Guchen's halo fell, would be qualified to sit on the throne of the top of the 7 geniuses. It could be imagined that if Bei Dangue sat on the top, his brother's status would obviously rise as well. Seeing that the Flaming Red Squad was defeated, Princess Yuanyang's pretty face also turned a little ugly. However, just as Fong Lang was about to kill Shan Mu, a sword light, as fast as a meteor, slashed toward Fong Lang's right arm. Humph! Which scoundrel launched a sneak attack? Fong Lang snorted coldly and turned his fist to hit the sword light. However, in the next moment, Fong Lang felt his arm go numb. Fong Lang lowered his head slightly. After a breath, a blood line appeared on his right wrist, and then his whole right hand fell down, blood gushing out from his tendons and veins. How is this possible? I used my profound qi to protect my body. Fong Lang covered his right wrist with his left hand and roared in pain. Yi Guchen's eyes under the mask looked coldly at Fong Lang. Although Fong Lang was an expert at the 4th level of the Essence Realm, Yi Guchen was holding a divine weapon with spiritual inscriptions. Although most of the spiritual inscriptions were worn out, and it was difficult to use, the materials used to forge the sword were the best. It was absolutely more than enough to tear apart a warrior at the 4th level of the Essence Realm. Die! Without too many words, Yi Guchen seemed to have returned to his previous life. Holding a sword in his hand, he fought with a group of heroes, killing one person in 10 steps, and leaving no trace for thousands of miles. Piercing Moon Swordsmanship's unique skill, Meteor Piercing Moon. A sword flashed, and the sword edged toward the air into 2 halves. Like a meteor, it streaked across Fong Lang's neck. Puff! Blood was flying, but it did not stain Yi Guchen's clothes. Then he turned the sword edge and killed another member of the Green Wolf hunting team. It was also an ordinary ungraded swordsmanship, and it was also only one sword. One sword cut the throat. Die! Next was the second person, the third person. Even if the Green Wolf hunting team came to their senses and surrounded Yi Guchen with 4 or 5 people, Yi Guchen used the Willow Catkin Wind movement skill and drifted flexibly among the 4 or 5 people. Even the strongest expert at the 3rd level of the Essence Realm could not touch the corner of his clothes. This is too horrible. Is he really in the body refining realm? Whether it was Shan Mu or Suya, the whole Flaming Red Squad was stunned. They did not need to do anything. Yi Guchen alone had slaughtered the whole Green Wolf hunting team. Bei Ling's eyes narrowed, and a murderous aura gathered between his eyebrows. He was determined to obtain the Dragon Blood Life Transforming Fruit. However, Yi Guchen's interference had caused his great advantage to disappear. You're courting death. Wang Zhan, help me stall for time. When I get the Dragon Blood Transforming Fruit, I'll give you 2. Bei Ling shouted. He raised the Mystic Essence sword in his hand and knocked away the Red Phoenix sword. Then he turned and shouted at Wang Zhan. Okay. Wang Zhan frowned. After thinking for a moment, he agreed. The team he hired had also suffered great losses, and they might not even get the Dragon Blood Transforming Fruit. The best way now was to cooperate with Bei Ling. Wang Zhan held a long black spear in his hand, and his profound qi surged. His cultivation rose from the 5th level of the Essence Realm to the 7th level of the Essence Realm. A secret skill that can increase one's strength in a short period of time? Princess Yuanyang frowned slightly. She and Sitaling looked at each other, and there was a tacit understanding between them. Kill! The 2 girls attacked at the same time, but Wang Zhan blocked them with his long spear. Boy, when I get the Dragon Blood Transforming Fruit, I'll kill you immediately. Bei Ling rushed toward the Dragon Blood Transforming Fruit in the valley. Oh, is that so? Yi Guchen flew over and blocked Bei Ling's path. Is he going to stop Bei Ling? He's a real 4th level genius. Shan Mu and the others were shocked. The geniuses of the big families were not like Fong Lang, who was a rogue cultivator. Whether it was spiritual weapons, martial skills, cultivation methods, or other methods. It could be said that even 5 Fonglang was no match for 1 Beiling. Seeing that Yi Guchen had blocked Beiling, surprise flashed across the pretty eyes of Princess Yuanyang and the rest. However, this was a good thing for them. At the very least, it had delayed Beiling's footsteps. I hope that guy can hold on for a while, Princess Yuanyang thought. Chapter 10. Seeing that Yi Guchen was blocking his way, Beiling was so angry that he laughed. Alright, you probably don't know who I am, right? I'm a genius from the Bei family, one of the 5 aristocratic families in the Milky Way province. My brother is one of the 7 geniuses, the Thunderbolt Sword Master, Bei Dangui. Beiling said proudly. So, Yi Guchen's lips curled into a cold smile. So it was unwise of you to provoke me. Do you think that just because you have good sword skills and killed that trash, Fonglang, you can compete with me, a rank 4 genius? Beiling laughed coldly, holding the Mystic Essence sword in his hand. I will kill you. I will also kill your brother in the future. Yi Guchen replied calmly. You're asking for death. Beiling swung his sword, and the sword flashed wildly. It was as if thousands of swords were attacking at the same time. It was the Bei family's Xiantian sword technique, the diffraction sword technique. Compared to this sword technique, the Thousand Shadows sword technique that Xia Yinger had used before was laughable. Of course, it didn't mean that the diffraction sword technique was more powerful than the Thousand Shadows sword technique. It was just that Xia Yinger's mastery of the Thousand Shadows sword technique was not as high as Beiling's. Oh, a diffraction sword technique. That's almost at the initial stage. Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows slightly in surprise, but that was it. Beiling had been practicing the diffraction sword technique since he was young. He had been practicing it for many years. If he hadn't reached the initial stage, he wouldn't be worthy of his title as a rank 4 genius. But this also showed how difficult it was to understand the Xiantian sword technique. Although the diffraction sword technique's sword flashes are chaotic, most of them are illusions. Only one is real. Yi Guchen swung his Calamity Dust sword. It was the moon-piercing sword technique's ultimate move, moon-piercing meteor. Facing Beiling, Yi Guchen did not use the Xia family's Aurora Quick Sword or the Boundless Heaven sword technique. This was because Princess Yuanyang and the others were here. It was not the right time to reveal his identity. The moon-piercing sword technique was an unorthodox sword technique, but it was already widely spread. Anyone who wanted to practice it could find it anywhere. Only swordsmanship above the innate realm was considered rare, and could not be possessed by ordinary martial artists. It's actually a small trick. Beiling was slightly surprised. It was not easy to cultivate any martial art to small accomplishment, even if it was the ungraded piercing moon sword art. However, Beiling was confident that he would definitely win this round. However, the next moment, the smile on Beiling's face froze. Shooting star-piercing moon sword strike had actually struck the only real sword shadow among the numerous sword shadows. Bang! The crisp sound of swords clashing rang out. Both of them took a step back at the same time. Beiling only took 2 steps back, but Yi Guchen took more than 10 steps back. No wonder he is a warrior of the profound origin realm. Yi Guchen shook his numb arm and narrowed his eyes. Beiling's cultivation level was higher than he had imagined. He should be at the 6th level of the essence stage. Compared to the geniuses, he was not much weaker. Impossible. My diffraction swordsmanship is almost at the level of small mastery. You are only in the body refining realm. How could you see through my technique? Beiling still could not believe that Yi Guchen had blocked his attack. I don't believe it. Beiling held his sword and attacked again. His diffraction sword technique was surrounded by a large amount of sword light. Yi Guchen vibrated the blood in his body and infused it into his tribulation dust. He fought fiercely with Beiling. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of swords clashing was endless. However, Yi Guchen could see through Beiling's hidden killer move every time. Duga Wubai, who had been in the way of the sword for more than 40 years and was known as the Sword Demon, could not see through this trick. He would not live up to his name. You're just a warrior of the body refining realm. Do you think I can't kill you? Beiling circulated his profound origin, and his aura rose. He attacked again. On the Xianyuan sword, there were a total of 9 weapon meridians lit up. Under the support of the 9 weapon meridians, the sword light on the blade increased its power to a terrifying level. I'll let you have a taste of the Bei family's Xiantian sword technique. Raging Wave Sword Technique. Bei Ling slashed at Yi Gu-chun with his sword. It was as if a huge wave had been set off. The sword gleam was like a raging tide. A huge crack was plowed open on the ground. The surrounding rocks flew into the air. It was extremely powerful. His proficiency in the stormy sword technique was not as good as the diffraction sword art. He was only at the entry level. However, with the support of his cultivation at level 6 of the profound origin sword, and the enhancement of the 9 vessel channels of the mystic origin sword, the power of this sword had reached a terrifying level. Oh no! Whether it was Shan Mu and the others or Princess Yuanyang, their hearts sank when they saw this. Princess Yuanyang asked herself if she could take this strike. If she did not use her trump card, she would be severely injured, let alone a warrior of the body refining realm. Just when everyone thought Yi Gu-chun would be killed by Bei Ling's strike, Yi Gu-chun finally moved. He vibrated all the qi and blood in his body, and temporarily released a great power. Then, he held the Calamity Dust sword and lit up 13 weapon meridians. It's also an upper-grade spiritual weapon. No, it's close to the supreme grade. Princess Yuanyang and the others were surprised when they saw this. Upper-grade spiritual weapons were already very precious. Ordinary warriors could not get them. As for supreme-grade spiritual weapons, even geniuses like them could not get them. The reason why Princess Yuanyang had the supreme-grade spiritual weapon, Red Phoenix Sword, was because her father was the head of a mansion. Looks like this guy had a fortuitous encounter. But this is the end. Princess Yuanyang sighed. She had already determined Yi Gu-chun's death. The only thing she needed to do was to defeat Wang Zhan as soon as possible. Die! Bei Ling pressed down with his sword. The sword light was like a raging wave hitting the shore. It split the mountain rocks and shattered the earth. The power of a genius was on full display. However, Yi Gu-chun's mind was calm. Facing the imminent threat of death, he did not panic in the slightest. As the sword demon, he had experienced too many life and death situations. Yi Gu-chun did not clash with Bei Ling's sword. Instead, he held the Calamity Dust sword and drew a circle. That's right. It was a circle. A simple circle. However, when the raging sword qi touched the circle, it did not break immediately. Instead, it was as if the circle was pulling it. The sword qi was slowly absorbed into the circle. It was as if the sword qi was being swallowed by a whirlpool. What kind of sword technique is this? Bei Ling was shocked. There was actually such a sword technique that could block the raging wave sword technique, which was known to be extremely powerful. Cracking sounds came from Yi Gu-chun's body. It was the sound of his bones and muscles being torn apart. At the same time, Yi Gu-chun's hand, which was holding the sword, was also torn. Blood flowed down his wrist. If the swordsmanship that he displayed was seen in his previous life, it would definitely not be unfamiliar to anyone who saw it. Tai Chi Sword Technique. It was created by one of the top 10 masters in the Jianghu, the true deity of Tai Chi, Zhang Sanfeng. To be able to stand side by side with the sword demon, Duge Wu Bai, one could see how high Zhang Sanfeng's cultivation level was. His Tai Chi sword technique was also collected and studied by the sword demon. Hence, Yi Gu-chun was not unfamiliar with the Tai Chi sword technique. The Tai Chi sword technique emphasized using softness to overcome hardness. Yin and Yang complemented each other. The raging wave sword technique was extremely ferocious. The Tai Chi sword technique could counter such a ferocious sword. However, the difference in cultivation level between Bei Ling and Yi Gu-chun was too great. Hence, Yi Gu-chun's body could not withstand the pressure brought by the raging wave sword qi. Boom! Yi Gu-chun's Tai Chi circle shattered with a loud roar that sounded like a raging wolf's stampede. Yi Gu-chun took advantage of the strong recoil force and flew directly to the depths of the valley, landing beside the strange little tree. Without any hesitation, Yi Gu-chun kept the 5 dragon blood transforming fruits into his origin ring. Then he dashed towards the crack at the side of the valley. This scene caused everyone's brain to short-circuit for a moment. They could not be blamed. Even Bei Ling himself was stunned for a moment. After a while, an extremely angry roar came out of Bei Ling's mouth. I want you dead. No matter where you run to, I want you dead. As the genius of the Bei family, he was played by a warrior who was only in the body refining realm. Bei Ling could not take this lying down. Boom! He stomped on the ground. Vigorous profound qi exploded under his feet. His body was as fast as lightning as he chased after Yi Guchen. Let's go! On the other side, Wang Zhan also stopped fighting and followed Bei Ling. Sita Ling followed closely behind. Only Princess Yuanyang had a happy smile on her face. She had also agreed on the location with the flaming red squad. However, she still followed them to be on the safe side. Let's go and have a look. Shan Mu and the others, including the remaining members of the hunting team, all followed. They were very curious about the end of a mysterious master who could compete with a fourth-grade genius. Leave. The only thought in Yi Guchen's mind was to leave. The gap between his realm and Bei Ling's was still too big. Even with the help of the divine spiritual weapon and the sword technique, he could only narrow the gap temporarily. He could not really compete with Bei Ling. At this moment, his body was in a very bad condition. After forcefully shaking his qi and blood, it was a period of decline. There were many lacerations in his bones and muscles. Even some of his organs were damaged. Bei Ling's cultivation was at the 6th level of the essential qi realm. He had an upper-grade spiritual weapon and the powerful storm sword technique. It was enough to threaten Yi Guchen's life. However, Yi Guchen was not afraid at all. Instead, his eyes were filled with excitement. It had been a long time since he had tasted such a life-or-death crisis. The sword demon, who was invincible in his previous life, had not tasted failure for a long time. Although he was being chased at this moment, Yi Guchen believed that as long as he refined the dragon blood transforming fruit, Bei Ling would soon be no match for him. He would just be a stepping stone. Boy die. A sword radiance attacked Yi Guchen from behind. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed and he dodged. The sword radiance brushed past his shoulder, causing blood to spurt out. Yi Guchen frowned. Originally, he could have dodged the sword radiance by using the Willow Catkin wind body technique. However, as his blood and qi were deteriorating, his body's functions had decreased. Even dodging was difficult. Even though you managed to withstand my sword technique of the tidal wave, I'm sure you're at the end of your rope. Hand over the dragon blood metamorphosis fruit, and I'll let you die a quick death. Bei Ling's cold voice rang out from behind. Yi Guchen ignored him and continued to run. You're asking for death. Another 3 sword radiances came at him. Yi Guchen barely dodged 2 of them. He used the calamity dust to block one of them. This caused Yi Guchen to spit out another mouthful of blood. His body's condition worsened. At this moment, a cliff suddenly appeared in front of Yi Guchen. The cliff was very strange. Half of it was covered in frost and snow. The other half was charred and smoking rocks. From within the cliff, ice-cold air and blazing flames continuously gushed out. This is... Yi Guchen's expression changed slightly. When he was at the market outside the Cloud Valley Mountain, he had some understanding of the special areas within the mountain. He did not expect to run into it. I didn't expect the Icefire Cliff to be here. Yi Guchen's expression was as calm as water. Haha, the heavens are on my side. Boy, do you think you can run away? On the other side of the forest, Bei Ling walked out. When he saw the Icefire Cliff, he could not help but let out a carefree laugh. Chapter 11. The Ice and Fire Cliff was a dangerous place in the Cloud Valley mountain range. It spewed out hot air and cold air all year round. Even a Qi refinement grandmaster couldn't enter the Ice and Fire Cliff, let alone a body refinement realm martial artist. Even true Qi couldn't withstand the heat and cold air. Seeing that Yi Guchen was a dangerous place behind him, Bei Ling laughed heartily. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of wind breaking could be heard. Wang Zhan, Princess Yuanyang, Sita Ling and the others appeared. Behind them were some hunting teams, but they didn't dare to approach. They only dared to watch from afar. Hand over the dragon blood transformation fruit quickly, and I can save your life. Princess Yuanyang stepped forward, holding the Crimson Phoenix sword as she looked at Yi Guchen. She couldn't have imagined that this masked man in black was the young sword great master that she had once yearned for day and night. But her love had turned into hatred. Yi Guchen. Princess Yuanyang, I'm warning you. This kid has angered me. He must die. Bei Ling shouted coldly, killing intent surging in his eyes. Don't even think about monopolizing the dragon blood transformation fruit. Wang Zhan stepped forward and swept his black spear, plowing a deep trench in the ground in front of him. You're right. No one can monopolize all 5 dragon blood transformation fruits. Sita Ling also stepped forward. Although she had teamed up with Princess Yuanyang to fight against Wang Zhan, it was only a partnership of interests. How could she let Princess Yuanyang monopolize the dragon blood transformation fruit now? Princess Yuanyang had a fiery personality, but she couldn't act recklessly in the face of 3 geniuses of the same level. Haha. Just as the 4 geniuses were fighting over who would get the dragon blood transformation fruit, Yi Guchen laughed. He purposely lowered his voice. His voice was hoarse and deep. I'm not dead yet, and you're already dividing the spoils. Are you in such a hurry to die? Bei Ling said with killing intent. You can only live if you give me the dragon blood transformation fruit. Princess Yuanyang shouted. Haha, interesting. I'll remember all of you, especially you. Yi Guchen's eyes shone with a sharp and cold light. He glanced at Bei Ling coldly. Bei Ling suddenly shuddered. The strong murderous intent made his back break out in cold sweat. This brat! Bei Ling's killing intent surged. Right at this moment, Princess Yuanyang seemed to have sensed something, and abruptly shouted. Not good, you want to? Ha! Yi Guchen stomped on the ground with one foot. His entire body flew backward and fell directly into the ice and fire precipice. Damn it! The 4 young geniuses cursed at the same time. After expending so much effort, and even using a life-saving method, in the end, there was nothing to be gained. Damn it, Bei Ling. If it wasn't for your oppression, we wouldn't have returned empty-handed today. Princess Yuanyang scolded. Her expression was extremely ugly. Wang Zhan and Sita Ling's expressions weren't any better. As for Bei Ling, he was gnashing his teeth in hatred. Although he was sure that Yi Guchen had no way to live, he didn't kill him with his own hands. Plus, he didn't get the dragon blood transformation fruit. Even if Yi Guchen died, he wouldn't feel happy at all. This brat is quite stubborn. No matter how unhappy Bei Ling was, there was nothing he could do. He couldn't enter the ice and fire precipice to find Yi Guchen. That would be no different from suicide. Sigh, what a pity. Shanmu, Suya, and the others saw this scene from afar and sighed. They also didn't think that Yi Guchen could survive. After all, even a Qi refining realm master wouldn't survive if he fell into the ice and fire precipice, let alone a body refining realm cultivator. At the bottom of the ice and fire precipice, Yi Guchen encountered an unprecedented danger. The entire bottom of the precipice was an ice and fire yin-yang pool. The pool was like a tai chi, half of it was crimson red like magma, and emitted red flames. The other half was a deep blue color, like an ice abyss. The cold air was so cold that it could even freeze true chi. At the center of the ice and fire yin-yang pool was the eye of the pool. The ice and fire yin-yang forces were the most concentrated in it. They reinforced and countered each other. It was extremely strange. At this moment, Yi Guchen had fallen at the edge of the ice and fire yin-yang pool. He was close to the stone wall. Even so, the surging cold and red flames still invaded Yi Guchen's body. Yi Guchen's body was already severely injured. Now that he was invaded by the 2 qi, he was even more severely injured. The yin and yang qi in his body were out of balance. Yi Guchen's body was sometimes frozen stiff and covered with frost. At other times it was extremely hot. He was like a lobster that had just been fished out of a boiling pot. Between the alternating cold and heat, Yi Guchen's life force gradually decreased. If this goes on, I'm afraid I'll really die. Yi Guchen was not afraid of death. If he was afraid of death, he would not have been so fearless when he broke through the void and faced the thunder tribulation in his previous life. What he regretted was that he had not seen the true scenery of this world, and had not reached the peak of Sword Dao. No, I'm the Sword Demon. This is just the beginning. How can I stop here? I have not seen the scenery of the peak. My sword has not reached the level of being unparalleled in history. Yi Guchen's eyes surged. It was his pursuit of sword Dao. It was his desire to reach the peak. Buzz! At this moment, Yi Guchen's dantian suddenly changed. The thunder tribulation sword that had been floating in the chaos in his dantian suddenly hummed, as if it had been summoned. Traces of thunder power spread from the sword like a spider web to Yi Guchen's limbs and bones. The domineering power of ice and fire did not have the slightest resistance in front of the thunder power. Yi Guchen immediately felt that the power of ice and fire that was rampaging in his body was being absorbed into the thunder calamity sword along with the power of the thunderbolt. It's so strange. Yi Guchen was surprised. He had a feeling of fighting to survive. He had long known that this sword was extraordinary. It was probably comparable to the famed ancient swords. However, this sword had been silent in his dantian all this time. It was only now that it showed its ability. With the absorption of the power of ice and fire, Yi Guchen's body gradually returned to normal. However, that was all. Although most of the power of ice and fire had been absorbed, there was still a small portion that remained in Yi Guchen's meridians and bones. It was difficult to get rid of it like gangrene. This ice and fire yin-yang pool can be used to cultivate the two top martial arts mental cultivation methods of the Jianghu in my previous life, Yi Guchen muttered. The two cultivation methods he was referring to were naturally the famous 9-yang divine skill and 9-yin manual in the Jianghu. These two martial arts mental cultivation methods were supreme. Yi Guchen intended to cultivate them because he could use them to comprehend the yin-yang sword principle. However, Yi Guchen needed to cultivate the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra and the muscle bone strengthening scripture. Even if he had a terrifying comprehension ability, he could not be distracted to cultivate the 9-yang divine skill and 9-yin manual. When I have cultivated the muscle bone strengthening scripture and marrow cleansing scripture to the advanced level, I can start to cultivate these two inner strength mental cultivation methods. Yi Guchen thought that these two martial arts mental cultivation methods would not be weaker than a king's level cultivation method in this world. At this moment, Yi Guchen suddenly discovered that the thunder tribulation sword in his dantian was vibrating even more violently. At the same time, there seemed to be some faint light on the sword's body that seemed to form some small characters. Could it be another cultivation method? Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows. This thunder tribulation sword was very mysterious. It had already given him the supreme cultivation method, the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. Therefore, Yi Guchen was still very interested in the characters that were about to appear. However, after a full day and absorbing an unknown amount of power of ice and fire, the characters on the thunder tribulation sword still did not appear. Instead they dimmed. Is the opportunity not here yet? Yi Guchen was not very disappointed. After swallowing some healing elixirs and adjusting his breathing for a day, Yi Guchen finally decided to start cultivating the muscle bone strengthening scripture again. At the same time, Yi Guchen also planned to pass the first minor tribulation of the blood tribulation of the physical body. Chapter 12. Yi Guchen swiped his finger across his origin ring, and a pile of spirit herbs appeared before his eyes. Other than the 5 dragon blood transformation fruits that he had risked his life to obtain, he had also obtained some spirit herbs in the Cloud Valley mountain range. Although many of them were low-grade spirit herbs, they were the most suitable to complement the dragon blood transformation fruits. Taking a deep breath, Yi Guchen picked up one of the dragon blood transformation fruits. The surface of the fruit exuded traces of qi and blood, and its life essence was extremely vigorous. It was as if he was holding a small heart. Without any hesitation, Yi Guchen swallowed the dragon blood transformation fruit. In an instant, it was as if he had swallowed a piece of charcoal. Vigorous life essence exploded within Yi Guchen's body, surging and spreading to his limbs and bones. Yi Guchen's skin instantly split open, as if he was filled with blood. What a domineering medicinal power! Yi Guchen was also slightly shocked. He hurriedly executed the first move of the body metamorphosis scripture. Skunda presents the pestle. With each move, the The vigorous life essence seemed to have expanded to its peak and began to slide down, gradually spreading to Yi Guchen's limbs and bones. The dragon blood transformation fruit not only contained vigorous life essence, but also a trace of dragon qi. This was also why the golden-eye horned dragon python had chosen the dragon blood transformation fruit as a tonic for the dragon transformation stage. Furthermore, Bei Dangui had also instructed his younger brother to obtain the dragon blood transformation fruit, because that trace of dragon qi was also very helpful for breaking through to the next stage. But now all of this was benefiting Yi Guchen. At the bottom of the cliff where ice and fire were steaming, the concept of time seemed to be blurred. Yi Guchen didn't know how much time had passed, but he had already swallowed the second dragon blood transformation fruit. The sound of waves seemed to come from his body, and that was his qi and blood rushing through his blood vessels. Body tempering stage 8. This was Yi Guchen's current perception of his own stage. But Yi Guchen's qi and blood were so vigorous that even an ordinary essence stage martial artist couldn't compare to it. At the same time, Yi Guchen's muscle bone strengthening scripture had also been cultivated to the small success stage. At this moment, Yi Guchen only felt that the tendons and meridians in his body were like bowstrings, flexible and tough to the extreme, containing tremendous strength. At the same time, a layer of tough elephant-like skin grew under his skin. With this layer of skin, Yi Guchen's body had already entered the realm of invulnerability in the pugilistic world of his previous life. Of course, in this world, it was still far from that. After all, the power of a spiritual weapon was far greater than that of an ordinary weapon, but its defensive ability was definitely much stronger. When Yi Guchen had mastered the muscle tendon changing scripture, he would be able to achieve the Vajradharma body. After that, he would also master the marrow cleansing scripture. Finally, he would be able to achieve the Vajradharma body, which was rumored to have been achieved by the first ancestor, Bodhidharma. Even in this world, the invincible Vajra body could be considered an absolute defense. After thinking about it, Yi Guchen stood up and threw out a punch. The wind from his fist whistled like an air cannon. Boom! His fist smashed deeply into the mountain wall, and a circle of cracks spread out around it. Yi Guchen nodded secretly. The muscle tendon changing scripture was indeed the ultimate art of the first ancestor, Bodhidharma. It did not disappoint him. This punch was probably 3,000 pounds of force. Ordinary martial artists in the essence realm would not be able to withstand it. Since my muscle tendon changing scripture has reached the initial success stage, then I'll directly pass the first minor tribulation of the blood tribulation of the physical body. Yi Guchen made up his mind and stepped directly into the ice and fire yin-yang pool. Although he was not close to the center of the pool, where the power of ice and fire was the densest, he could still feel the extremely vigorous power of ice and fire invading his body. Even the sword of thunder calamity could not completely dispel such a strong power of ice and fire in a short period of time. However, this was the kind of body tempering effect that Yi Guchen wanted. He swallowed another dragon blood transformation fruit into his stomach and immediately began to cultivate the 9 tribulations heart sutra. However, to pass the first minor tribulation of the blood tribulation of the physical body, the first step was to reverse the blood flow and ignite the vital energy in blood. If such a cultivation method had not manifested in the sword of thunder calamity, Yi Guchen would have suspected that this was an evil cultivation method that would end one's life. After all, reversing the blood flow and igniting the vital energy and blood was no different from suicide. However, this was the first tribulation of the physical body. I, the sword demon, have seen all kinds of storms in my life. How could I be afraid of such a small cultivation method? Yi Guchen smiled and reversed the vital energy and blood to begin cultivating. In an instant, Yi Guchen's skin swelled into a blood-red color. Wisps of fresh blood seeped out from his pores, and it looked quite terrifying. Even the sword demon, who had a strong mind and an iron will, could feel that his entire body was placed on a stone millstone. The feeling of his bones and blood being crushed bit by bit was too painful. In addition, the 2 energies of ice and fire alternated. It was as if the extreme cold and the burning hell were taking turns to torture Yi Guchen. This kind of pain was not something an ordinary person could endure. As expected of the Heart Sutra of 9 Tribulations. How can I stop here after overcoming the 9 tribulations to become a god? Yi Guchen roared and swallowed the last 2 dragon blood transforming fruits into his stomach. Boom! His vigorous vital energy and blood surged out again, replenishing the vital energy and blood used to overcome the blood tribulation of the physical body. At this moment, Yi Guchen's entire body was covered in blood, and his skin was cracked. The blood tribulation of the physical body was cruel. Just as Yi Guchen was going through the first minor tribulation of the physical body, the story of Bei Ling and the other 3 young experts and Yi Guchen in the Cloud Valley mountain range gradually spread from the mouths of the hunting team members. Many people were wondering who the masked man was. At the same time, they felt pity for him. After the incident with the dragon blood transformation fruits, Situ Shui was the first to leave. Princess Yuanyang and the other 2 continued to train in the central region of the Cloud Valley mountain range. There was another reason why Bei Ling did not leave. He did not know how to explain to Bei Dangui. Time passed day by day. 7 days later, at the bottom of the ice and fire-broken cliff, Yi Guchen sat quietly like a stone man. The surface of his body was covered with a thick layer of blood scabs. It looked very scary, like a blood cocoon made of blood. Crack! Accompanied by a faint cracking sound, a crack gradually appeared on the surface of the blood cocoon. From that crack, a wisp of flame suddenly emerged. A wisp of demonic blood-red flame. After a short while, continuous cracking sounds rang out. The entire blood cocoon was instantly filled with dense cracks. Then with a loud bang, the blood-red flame exploded. The tremor caused the ice and fire energies to disperse slightly. Yi Guchen's slender and well-proportioned figure gradually appeared in that ball of thick blood flames. The first minor tribulation of the physical body has been overcome. Yi Guchen slowly raised his hand. The thick blood-red flame tumbled in his palm. The temperature that it emitted could even make a warrior in the profound origin realm pale. Surging my blood and chi and burning it into flames consumes a lot of energy. However, I have cultivated the muscle bone strengthening scripture. In addition, I have passed the first minor tribulation. My blood and chi are like a rainbow. I can maintain it for a while. Yi Guchen suddenly clenched his 5 fingers. The blood flames instantly disappeared. He punched out again. The mountain wall shook. This punch was more powerful than before. It had reached a total of 5,000 pounds. I have such strength after passing the first minor tribulation. I wonder how powerful the dragon elephant force will be after passing the second minor tribulation. Yi Guchen pondered. In the next moment, he took out the calamity dust. With a turn of the sword, he cut a deep wound on his arm. Blood flowed out. Then, the strange thing was that the flesh near the wound was like a living creature. It wriggled slightly and slowly stuck together. In a short while, it condensed into a sturdy blood scab. His blood and chi burned. His strength increased, and his recovery ability increased greatly. This was the benefit of passing the tribulation. As expected of the Heart Sutra of 9 Tribulations, Yi Guchen sighed. He had chosen the right path. At this moment, his cultivation had reached the body tempering realm level 9, after passing the first minor tribulation. Next, he needed to accumulate strength and condense his blood and chi into profound origin realm, to break through to the profound origin realm. However, Yi Guchen still needed some time to accumulate his strength. Moreover, with Yi Guchen's current battle strength, he was not afraid of ordinary warriors of the profound origin realm. Even those geniuses, with their marvelous swordsmanship, could be a match for them. Bei Ling, it's time to settle the score. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed coldly. Yi Guchen's principle was to settle scores with a sword in hand. Chapter 13. Puchi. The mystic origin sword pierced through the head of a rank 1 monster, the shadow leopard. Bei Ling swung the sword in his hand, and threw the monster to the side. Damn it, it's all that brat's fault. I don't know how to face my brother. I didn't get the dragon blood transformation fruit, and my brother's time to break through to the chi refinement realm has been extended. I heard that Xia Yubing from the Xia family is about to come out of seclusion. Bei Ling cursed. However, when he mentioned Xia Yubing, there was a deep sense of fear in his eyes. When Yi Guchen was ranked first among the 7 prodigies, the other 6, including his brother Bei Dangui, were all overshadowed by Yi Guchen from the Sword sect. But now, Yi Guchen had fallen and Xia Yubing was right behind him. As a rank 5 genius, Xia Yubing was already very talented. Adding on the fact that she had inherited the entire inheritance of the North River Sword King, Chu Donglu, her future was limitless. I've heard that the North River Sword King has surpassed the 4 mortal evolution states. He's a terrifying expert that has crossed the spirit bridge. Now that Xia Yubing has obtained Chu Dongliu's inheritance, I'm afraid she'll become the second Yi Guchen. Bei Ling sighed. Even his elder brother was incomparably fearful of Xia Yubing, so he was even less qualified to challenge Xia Yubing. However, at this moment, an extremely sharp sword chi shot towards Bei Ling, who, although this attack caught him off guard, Bei Ling was still a rank 4 genius. His reaction was fast, and he blocked it with the Mystic Origin sword. However, what made Bei Ling's expression change slightly was the huge force contained within the sword aura. It was so strong that his arm was slightly numb. Who are you? I am Bei Ling from the North family of the Sky River Prefecture, Bei Ling said with a serious tone. It's only been a few days and you've already forgotten me? A figure wearing a black iron mask slowly appeared in the forest. It's you. How is this possible? When Bei Ling saw Yi Guchen, he first blinked in confusion, and then screamed in disbelief. The Icefire Cliff was a place where even a Qi Refinement Realm master would have a hard time surviving after falling in. He couldn't imagine how Yi Guchen came out alive. I told you to wait. I didn't expect you to really not leave. You saved me a lot of trouble. Yi Guchen's finger swiped across his origin ring, and the Calamity Dust sword appeared in his hand. A cold and murderous aura spread out. Your aura, could it be? Bei Ling's face immediately turned ugly. He wasn't surprised that Yi Guchen's cultivation had reached body tempering stage 9. Instead, he knew that Yi Guchen had already refined the dragon blood transformation fruit. Damn it. You've obtained something that you shouldn't have. The price you have to pay is your life. Bei Ling's murderous intent had reached its peak. He had to kill Yi Guchen. There's no point in talking. Let's fight. Yi Guchen held the Calamity Dust sword and stepped forward. Do you think you can fight me just because you've refined the dragon blood transformation fruit? You haven't even reached the essence realm. You're only at the 9th level of the body refinement realm. I'll kill you like a dog. Bei Ling used the stormy sword technique again. In an instant, sword aura surged out like a huge wave. The surrounding rocks and trees were crushed into dust by the violent sword aura. If it was before, Yi Guchen would frown when faced with this sword aura. But now, Yi Guchen let out a cold snort and shook the blood in his body. In an instant, his aura rose and the power of his blood was not much weaker than Bei Ling's. How is this possible? Is this guy a monster in human form? Bei Ling was also shocked by Yi Guchen's blood. However, his movements did not slow down at all. The Raging Wave sword technique swept toward Yi Guchen with a power that could destroy everything. Yi Guchen held the Calamity Dust sword in his hand. The sword moved in a mysterious pattern and formed a complete circle. It was a circle that seemed to be able to contain everything. It's this sword technique again. If I can break it once, I can break it again. Bei Ling was a little wary of Yi Guchen's strange defensive sword technique. However, when he fought with Yi Guchen previously, he knew that Yi Guchen's cultivation level was far lower than his. Therefore, as long as he used his essence chi to shake the sword aura, he could forcefully break the circle. As the saying goes, a strong person can defeat 10 skilled people. This was the principle. However, just as the smile on Bei Ling's face started to form, it froze as if it had been frozen. Impossible! Bei Ling screamed hoarsely. This was because he realized that no matter how he activated the Mystic Essence sword, the stormy sword aura it emitted was absorbed by the strange circle, like a clay ox entering the sea. Yi Guchen, who was enduring the pressure of the stormy sword aura, did not look as pathetic as before. Only the web between his thumb and forefinger was torn. However, This injury was nothing to a body that had passed the first minor tribulation. How long has it been? Your strength has actually increased by so much. Dragon blood metamorphosis fruit. It must be the dragon blood metamorphosis fruit. Damn it. That was supposed to be an opportunity for me and my brother. But it was snatched away by you. Bei Ling became even more furious when he saw that his stormy swordsmanship could no longer deal with Yi Guchen's strange swordsmanship. You're too naive if you want to kill me. I'll let you have a taste of your own sword aura. The blood in Yi Guchen's body circulated rapidly. He did not feel good after enduring the angry attack of a level 6 elite. However, the Tai Chi sword technique absorbed all of Bei Ling's stormy sword aura. Tai Chi was about borrowing strength to attack strength. It was the same whether it was a palm technique, a fist technique, or a sword technique. What? Bei Ling instinctively felt that something was wrong when he heard Yi Guchen's words. The Tai Chi sword technique. Borrowing strength to attack strength. Sword go. Yi Guchen shouted. The circle formed by the tip of the sword suddenly disappeared. What followed was a raging wave of stormy sword aura. Although this sword aura was not as powerful as Bei Ling's, it was at least 50% as powerful. Previously, Yi Guchen's cultivation level was too low. Although he had used the Tai Chi sword technique, he did not have enough strength to reflect it back. However, now that his strength had increased, Yi Guchen could do it. It's a pity that I have to recultivate. I have to re-understand all kinds of sword will and sword principles. Otherwise, if I could fully understand the Tai Chi sword technique, I would be able to reflect more than 5 times the damage. Yi Guchen sighed in his heart. Although he still had the comprehension of the sword demon, he still had to re-understand all kinds of sword will. It was impossible for him to fully master it. Boom! Although he only had 50% of his strength, the stormy sword aura that was reflected still caught Bei Ling off guard. The sword aura tore his clothes and shook his organs, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. You actually injured me? Bei Ling seemed to be in disbelief. No, what I want to do is to kill you. Yi Guchen shook the dust in his hand. Suddenly 13 weapon veins lit up. At the same time, Yi Guchen ignited his blood. The demonic blood-red flame spread from his arm to the calamity dust sword. On the tip of the sword, the blood-red flame was burning. Swoosh! Yi Guchen struck with his sword. It was as if a blood-red lightning bolt had formed. It was the sword technique of the Jianghu from his previous life, the linear lightning sword. Although this sword technique was not created by the Jianghu's top 10 masters, it was still a top-tier sword technique. Yi Guchen estimated that the linear lightning sword was not weaker than an innate stage sword technique, in terms of quality. Oh no! Bei Ling roared and used the diffraction sword technique. However, how could such an illusory sword technique confuse Yi Guchen? Puffed! At the crucial moment, Bei Ling also pushed the profound qi in his body to the limit. At the same time, he used the Bei family's cloud steps and moved 6 inches to the side. It was this 6 inches that caused the blood-red sword aura that was about to pierce through Bei Ling's heart to shift to his arm that was holding the sword. Bei Ling's arm was pierced and a hole was made in his arm bone. However, the most terrifying thing was that there were still blood-red flames around the wound. They continued to burn his blood. What kind of flame is this? It can burn flesh. Oh no, let's go. Bei Ling did not dare to fight with Yi Guchen anymore. He quickly used the cloud steps and retreated. From his point of view, although Yi Guchen was only a body-refining realm martial artist, he had all kinds of tricks and strange sword techniques. Just the Tai Chi sword technique that could reflect sword aura was enough to make Bei Ling wary. Now that his arm that was holding the sword had been pierced, he could not use the sword smoothly. It would be even harder to kill Yi Guchen. You want to leave? You are too naive. How could Yi Guchen let Bei Ling go so easily? Yi Guchen would never release a tiger back into the mountains, even though Bei Ling was not considered a tiger. In the central region of the Cloud Valley Mountain, the Red Flame hunting team had just finished killing a rank 1 monster. After Yi Guchen fell off the cliff, although Princess Yuanyang was angry, she did not vent her anger on them. Of course, the reward was wasted. Shan Mu swung his sword and took out the monster core from the monster's body. When he turned his head, he saw Suya in a daze. Suya, what's wrong? Are you still thinking about that masked young man? Shanmu smiled. No, I just feel that it's a pity. I haven't even seen his true face, before he was forced to his death by Bei Ling and the others. Suya regained her senses and pouted. She sighed softly. At this moment, a tragic and hoarse shout suddenly resounded in the forest not far away. Damn it, you really have to force me to this extent. You should know that the Bei family is one of the 5 big families in the Sky River province. You are just digging your own grave by chasing after me. Shan Mu and the others were not unfamiliar with that shrill voice. They had heard it a few days ago. It's Bei Ling. Shan Mu and Suya looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Someone was chasing after Bei Ling. They had just seen how strong Bei Ling was a few days ago. Whether it was the diffraction sword technique or the tidal sword technique, they were both very powerful. And now, someone was chasing after Bei Ling. I want to kill you. No matter what your background is, I will kill you. A low and slightly hoarse voice rang out. It was like the Grim Reaper from hell. This voice, could it be? If Shan Mu and Suya were shocked before, then their expressions now were that of horror. Swoosh swoosh. 2 figures, one in front and one behind. Yi Guchen swung his sword, and the sword aura swept out. Bei Ling did not even look at it, and used the cloud travel steps to dodge. It's really them. How is this possible? When they saw Bei Ling and Yi Guchen, Shan Mu and the others confirmed their guesses. He's not dead. Not only that, he's chasing after Bei Ling. How did he do it? Suya gritted her teeth and looked at the rapidly moving figure. Her heart was as curious as a cat. Her footsteps flashed and she tried to catch up. Shan Mu and the others saw this and followed closely behind. Chapter 14. Damn it, I might really die. But don't worry, I still have a trick up my sleeve. Plus, I can still find Brother Wang. Bei Ling, who was being chased by Yi Guchen, was in a sorry state. His green robe was torn, and there were many wounds on his body. The wounds were charred black, and showed signs of being burned by flames. He had already used up half of his profound qi. It was even harder for him to fight against Yi Guchen. Bei Ling gritted his teeth, and took out a jade scroll. He crushed it. Yi Guchen's eyes were sharp. He saw Bei Ling's move. Looking for help? Can you survive until help arrives? Yi Guchen's eyes dimmed. Weapon veins lit up on the calamity dust sword in his hand. A blood-red flame slowly rose and circled around the sword. He attacked with his sword. It was the linear lightning sword's ultimate move, Thunder Crash. Yi Guchen had also mastered the linear lightning sword to the minor completion level. He was as fast as lightning. The moment the sword light shot out, it had already reached Bei Ling's back. Damn it! Bei Ling used all his profound qi again. He turned around and swung the Mystic Essence sword. However, his right arm that held the sword had already been pierced through. He could not even use 30 to 40% of his power. How could he fight against Yi Guchen? The sword light collided and exploded. Bei Ling's body was pushed back again. His organs were in turmoil, and he could not help but spit out blood again. At the same time, just as Bei Ling crushed the jade scroll, Wang Zhan, who was in another area in the middle of the Cloud Valley Mountain, received a message. Yes, Bei Ling is being hunted down by that guy. If I save him this time, Bei Dangui will definitely owe me a favor, Wang Zhan thought to himself. He no longer hesitated, and rushed in the direction where Bei Ling had sent the signal. As Bei Ling and Yi Guchen fled, many people in the hunting team were alerted. Some of them had participated in the fight for the dragon blood transforming fruit. Naturally, they recognized Bei Ling and Yi Guchen. Because of this, when they saw Bei Ling running away pathetically, they were dumbfounded. Have you heard? Bei Ling, the genius of the Bei family of the Milky Way Prefecture, is being chased by a masked man. I know. I heard that this masked man snatched the dragon blood transforming fruit in front of the 4 young masters. But didn't he fall down the ice and fire cliff in the end? I don't know about that. But from the looks of it, although the masked man is only at the body refinement realm, his battle prowess is not inferior to these geniuses. Sai, what's the use of that? If we kill Bei Ling, his brother, the thunderbolt sword Xiaobei Angelica, is not someone to be trifled with. Whoosh! Yi Guchen swung his sword again, and Bei Ling blocked it with his sword. Then his body was sent flying and he spat out blood. At this moment, Bei Dangui was already an arrow at the end of its flight. He didn't even have much profound chi left to use the cloud roaming steps. Who are you? With your swordsmanship, you are definitely not an ordinary person. Bei Ling's gaze froze on Yi Guchen's face. It was as if he wanted to see through the mask to see his true face. Yi Guchen wasn't afraid that he would guess his identity. First of all, in Bei Ling's eyes, Yi Guchen was already a useless person. There was no way he could be him. Second of all, Yi Guchen didn't use any swordsmanship that would reveal his identity. Therefore, Bei Ling would never guess that the person who had chased him to this point was the useless person he was talking about. Who I am is not important. What's important is that you will die. Yi Guchen moved his feet, and once again charged forward with his sword. In the forest not far away, a beautiful figure stopped on top of the dense canopy. Her figure was graceful and her face was as beautiful as jade. She had a noble aura. It was Princess Yuanyang. The rumors are true. Princess Yuanyang opened her small red mouth in shock. She seemed to be in disbelief. The masked man who she didn't care about a few days ago was now able to force Bei Ling to this point. This meant that if she were to fight the masked man, she wouldn't have a good time either. When she thought of this, Princess Yuanyang became curious about the masked man's identity. However, seeing that Bei Ling's life was hanging by a thread, Princess Yuanyang obviously didn't plan to help. Instead, she hugged the Scarlet Phoenix sword and watched from afar. Damn it! After being hit by Yi Guchen again, Bei Ling looked at Princess Yuanyang, who was watching from afar. His expression was extremely ugly. He obviously knew that Princess Yuanyang wouldn't help him. However, at this moment, from the other side of the forest, a black-clothed figure rushed over. He held a black spear and his aura was fierce. It's Brother Wang. Come and save me. Bei Ling shouted loudly, as if he was grabbing onto a life-saving straw when he saw Wang Zhan. Brother Bei, don't worry. I'll help you. Just as Wang Zhan was about to arrive, Yi Guchen's eyes flashed coldly like the stars in the night sky. He swung his sword and sent out a blood flame sword aura towards Bei Ling's back. Do you really think I don't have any tricks up my sleeve? Bei Ling shouted angrily. He turned around and took out a spiritual weapon that looked like a bamboo tube. Oh no, that's a thunderfire needle. Princess Yuanyang, who was watching from afar, suddenly shouted. She didn't really want to warn Yi Guchen. She just wanted to see Bei Ling suffer. It would be even better if he was killed. After all, women were very vengeful. Not to mention a girl like Princess Yuanyang who was arrogant and willful. Boom! Bei Ling circulated the last of his profound chi in his palm, and then slapped the spiritual weapon in the bamboo tube. In an instant, lightning flashed and thunder shook the sky. A ball of fine needles with terrifying penetrative power flew towards Yi Guchen. With Yi Guchen's movement skills, he could dodge the needles as long as he dodged. However, this gave Bei Ling a chance to escape. Yi Guchen definitely couldn't kill Bei Ling under Wang Zhan's protection. If Yi Guchen still wanted to kill Bei Ling, then the Thunderfire Needle would hit him. This was Bei Ling's final trump card. Actually, his strongest trump card was the Heavenly Fire Thunderbolt. However, he used it on the golden-eyed horned dragon python. The Thunderfire Needle's power was far inferior to the Heavenly Fire Thunderbolt. However, in Bei Ling's eyes, it was enough to deal with a body-refining realm swordsman. Haha brat, you still can't take my life. When I return, I will definitely mobilize the power of my family and cut you into pieces to relieve the hatred in my heart. Bei Ling's face was cold and ferocious. This was the first time he was forced to such a state. Oh, is that so? Yi Guchen's eyes suddenly locked onto Bei Ling's body. It was as if he was looking at a dead man. Bei Ling suddenly felt a chill in his throat. One strike. Yi Guchen struck out with his sword again. However, this strike was too fast and too beautiful. The silver light flashed, and it was as if a cold moon was falling. It was an almost perfect sword path. That's... Bei Ling even lost his focus for a moment. Not only Bei Ling, but Princess Yuanyang, Wang Zhan, and the other members of the hunting team who were watching the battle, including Shanmu, Suya, and the others, all saw that strike. It was an almost perfect sword strike, carrying with it a strange beauty of death. Piercing Moon Swordsmanship's ultimate move, Moonfall. With one strike the cold moon fell. If he did not return, his life would not return. Slash. A subtle cutting sound was heard as the moonlight slashed across Bei Ling's neck. The numerous needles of the Thunderfire Needle pierced deeply into Yi Guchen's body. Bei Ling's eyes were wide open, as if he wanted to say something. However, he could not say anything. Yi Guchen swung his sword with one hand, and cut off Bei Ling's finger with the Vitality Ring. He kept the Vitality Ring in his pocket. Plop! Bei Ling fell to the ground. Blood flowed out and formed a pool. He was dead. Wang Zhan's expression froze. He looked at Yi Guchen with fear in his eyes. Princess Yuanyang was the same. However, there was more shock on her face. Although it was just an inferior piercing moon swordsmanship, she would not even bother to look at such a swordsmanship on a normal day. Moreover, this mediocre sword technique had been trained to the advanced stage by this masked man in front of her. Moreover, the might of that powerful killing move caused even a blessed girl like her to feel a little terrified. Looking at the dead Bei Ling, Yi Guchen turned his gaze to Wang Zhan again. You want to take revenge for him? Hearing Yi Guchen's words, Wang Zhan took a step back. His expression was serious. Although Yi Guchen had been injured by the Thunderfire Needle, he did not seem to have any abnormalities. Wang Zhan knew that Yi Guchen might be tricking him. However, it was only a guess. If Yi Guchen was really fine, Wang Zhan could not guarantee that he would be able to take the blow if he used the same move again. Even if he could barely withstand it, he would most likely end up seriously injured. Was it worth it for Bei Ling and Bei Dangui? Wang Zhan was a smart man. He looked at Yi Guchen and said in a low voice, "With your cultivation, you will not be quiet in the future. We will meet again sooner or later." After saying that, Wang Zhan retreated. This made the surrounding warriors of the hunting team speechless. Wang Zhan was the strongest genius below the Heaven's Pride level. However, he was scared away. Yi Guchen heaved a sigh of relief. He turned around and was about to leave. Wait! A tender voice that was as clear as a silver bell suddenly rang out. You want to fight? Yi Guchen's voice was slightly hoarse. Who on earth are you? You have persevered and practiced such an inferior swordsmanship, like the moon-piercing sword art, to the advanced level. I'm afraid you are not an ordinary person. Princess Yuanyang's beautiful eyes were filled with curiosity as she stared at Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen only felt that it was funny. He didn't know what she would think when she found out about his identity. There is no such thing as an unorthodox sword art. There is only an unorthodox swordsman. After saying that, Yi Guchen shook his head slightly and left. There is no such thing as an unorthodox sword art. There is only an unorthodox swordsman. Princess Yuanyang was stunned. She seemed to be in a daze. So even the most ordinary swordsmanship, as long as it was cultivated to the highest level, could also erupt with terrifying power? Princess Yuanyang was thinking. When she came back to her senses, the masked man had disappeared. Chapter 15. Outside the Cloud Valley mountain range, in a cave of a wild beast, Yi Guchen sat on the ground and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. The Bei family has many tricks up their sleeves. Yi Guchen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and thought to himself. He originally thought that the Heavenly Fire Thunderbolt was Bei Ling's trump card. He did not expect him to have the Thunderbolt Thunderfire Needle. For a normal warrior, if they were hit by a needle as thin as a cow's hair, they would definitely suffer a fate worse than death. It was also very difficult to pull the needle out of the body because it was too thin. However, for Yi Guchen, he cultivated the I Ching scripture. As long as he cultivated the I Ching scripture once, the needles would naturally be treated as foreign objects and be expelled from his body. After recuperating for 2 days, Yi Guchen managed to expel all the needles from his body. This was also thanks to the layer of skin under his skin. That layer of tough skin prevented the needles from penetrating too deeply into his body. That was why he was able to expel all the needles quickly. After resting, Yi Guchen took out Bei Ling's vitality ring. Yi Guchen used his blood to break through the seal and looked through the items inside. There were about 800 crystal jades. This made Yi Guchen frown. However, on second thought, Bei Ling came to the Cloud Valley mountain range for the dragon blood transformation fruit. Naturally, he would not bring too many crystal jades. Also, what made Yi Guchen's eyes light up was that he actually saw a hidden weapon shaped like a bamboo tube. Thunderbolt Thunderfire Needle. There's actually a Thunderbolt Thunderfire Needle. Yi Guchen did not hesitate and kept it in his vitality ring. This hidden weapon did not have much of an effect on Yi Guchen, but it did not mean that it was useless against others. After all, in this world, only Yi Guchen cultivated the I Ching scripture. It was not bad as a temporary hidden weapon and a life-saving trump card. If one was caught off guard, even a Qi cultivation realm master would be put in a difficult position. However, what surprised Yi Guchen was that he did not see the diffraction sword technique or the tidal sword technique in the vitality ring. Instead, he saw another sword technique, Jade Scroll. This was a sword technique that Bei Ling had never used before. Vacuum Sword Wave. It's the Bei family's Xiantian sword technique. I heard that it's the most difficult Xiantian sword technique to cultivate. Among the younger generation of the Bei family, only Bei Dangui has cultivated it. Yi Guchen picked up the jade slip that recorded the vacuum sword wave and read it carefully. After some understanding, Yi Guchen finally understood why vacuum sword wave was the hardest Xiantian sword art to cultivate. This was because this was not a complete Xiantian sword art, but a remnant of a spirit-grade sword art. Yi Guchen knew how difficult it was to cultivate a spiritual-level sword art. Even though he was a sword devil, he had only reached the advanced level after cultivating the Boundless Heaven sword art for a period of time. Although the vacuum sword wave was only a remnant of a spirit-level sword art, it was definitely more difficult to cultivate than an ordinary Xiantian-level sword art. But correspondingly, its power was definitely not something an ordinary Xiantian sword art could compare to. If Bei Ling had cultivated the vacuum sword wave, Yi Guchen might not have been able to deal with it so easily. In the next few days, other than resting his body, Yi Guchen began to cultivate the vacuum sword wave. With Yi Guchen's understanding of swordsmanship, he did not mind the distraction of cultivating multiple sword techniques. Only by using the strengths of 100 schools of thought could he create a perfect sword technique. For example, the 9 swords of Dugu. In his previous life, Dugu Wubai had gathered the strengths of 100 schools of thought and created a unique sword technique with tens of years of experience in swordsmanship. In this life, Yi Guchen also planned to create his own sword technique. He wanted to create the most perfect sword technique. After a few days, Yi Guchen finally left the Cloud Valley Mountains and returned to Shanghe City. After returning to the city, the first thing Yi Guchen did was to go to the underground market and sell the golden-eyed horned dragon pythons, jade horn, and demonic pill for a total of 1,300 crystal jades. In addition to the 800 crystal jades in Bei Ling's origin ring, he had a total of 2,100 crystal jades. I still need 900 crystal jades to reach 3,000 crystal jades, Yi Guchen muttered. Perhaps he should go somewhere else. But he still needed to settle some of the Xia family's matters first. The Xia family? Once I've settled some matters, I should leave, Yi Guchen thought to himself. At this moment, in the Xia family's sparring square, which was located in the middle of the Xia family's sparring square, was a boiling cauldron of voices. There were almost 1,000 people surrounding the sparring square, their shouts shaking the heavens. In the middle of the sparring square, there were a total of 9 sparring arenas. Each of the Xia family's disciples tried their best to demonstrate the improvements they had made in the past year. This was the annual sparring event of the Xia family. It was used to test the cultivation progress of the Xia family's disciples. On the spectator stand beside the sparring square, a group of elders dressed in brocade robes sat there. Other than the Xia family's head, Xia Yuan, and a group of elders, there were also elders from the Bei family, Song family, and Wang family. As for the Zhou family, one of the 5 great families, they had always been at odds with the Xia family. Naturally, they were not present. The sparring event was also a place to display the strength of the family's disciples to the outside world. If a great family had a successor, it would naturally continue to prosper. Xia family's head, your family's junior Xia Shishir, is really talented. Her frosty sword technique should be at the threshold of initial success soon. Bei family's elder, Bei Ming, looked at a young lady in green on the arena and smiled faintly. The Bei family and the Xia family had a good relationship. Hence, they conversed harmoniously. Haha, not at all. Compared to the Bei family's Bei Dangui, she's still too far away. Xia Yuan laughed. Although he said this, the smile on his face did not fade. Xia family's head, your words are incorrect. Right now, in the entire Milky Way province, who doesn't know that the Xia family has produced a phoenix who has obtained the inheritance of the North River Sword King, Chu Donglu? I'm afraid that as soon as she comes out of seclusion, she'll become the head of the 7 heavenly prides of the Milky Way province, Wang family's elder, Wang Peng said. On the other side, Song family's elder Song Fei heard this and his expression became slightly ugly. The Song family's genius, Song Daozhen, was originally ranked second among the 7 heavenly prides, second only to the former sword master, Yi Guchen. Originally, after Yi Guchen's death, the first place naturally fell to Song Daozhen. However, Xia Yubing had appeared out of nowhere and suppressed Song Daozhen. However, the most helpless thing was that Song Fei had to admit that Xia Yubing, who had obtained the inheritance of the North River Sword King, did indeed have the strength to suppress Song Daozhen. As if he had caught a glimpse of Song Fei's gloomy expression, the smile on Xia Yuan's face became even wider. Having a woman like Xia Yubing was truly the Xia family's fortune. As for Yi Guchen, who had been fostered in the Xia family since childhood, and was no different from a cripple, Xia Yuan didn't pay too much attention to him. After all, the reason Yi Guchen had been fostered in the Xia family was because one of the Xia family's elders had a slight relationship with Yi Guchen's father. Later on, that elder had died in an accident in the Cloud Valley mountain range, and the Xia family no longer had any substantial relationship with Yi Guchen. If it weren't for Yi Guchen's astonishing talent, his status as a sword master, and his unfathomably powerful ugly aunt following him, the Xia family probably would have sent Yi Guchen away long ago. Boom! On the stage, Xia Shishir used the Thousand Shadows sword art, and several dozen rays of sword light shot out. Across from her, a young girl with a scar on her face wearing tight-fitting clothes suddenly paled. This girl was Xia Yinger. You've actually cultivated the Thousand Shadows sword art to this level, Xia Yinger shrieked. Although she had also cultivated the Thousand Shadows sword art, there was still a large gap between her and Xia Shishir. Clang! Along with the crisp sound of swords clashing, Xia Yinger was directly knocked off the stage. Little sister Yinger, thank you for letting me win. Xia Shishir had a slender figure, and her eyes were as clear as water. Even though she had won, she was still very calm. This caused many of the Xia family's youths to stare blankly at her. It could be said that Xia Shishir was the goddess in the hearts of the Xia family's youths, with the exception of Xia Yubing. I've lost, but you won't get first place either, Xia Yinger coldly said. Then there's no need for little sister Yinger to worry. Xia Shishir lightly smiled, like a spring breeze caressing her face. The final battle, Xia Shishir versus Xia Yan. One of the Xia family's deacons shouted. The final battle of the Xia family's skill comparison competition attracted everyone's attention. As for Xia Yubing, she was still in seclusion. With her talent and strength, there was no need for her to prove herself through the skill comparison competition. On the stage, a red-robed youth walked up step by step, carrying a 9-ringed saber on his shoulder. This youth was one of the Xia family's 3 third-grade geniuses, and he was the one with the highest cultivation, Xia Yan. Although he didn't cultivate the way of the sword, and the Xia family's 3 great Xiantian sword techniques were useless to him, he had once obtained a Xiantian blade technique by chance, and its power wasn't any weaker than a sword technique. Sure. Yinger told me that you were the one who protected that trash Yi Guchen last time, right? Xia Yan's body was sturdy, and his eyes were fierce. His voice was cold, and it carried a bit of pressure. So what if I did? Feeling Xia Yan's oppressive aura, even Xia Shirshir, who had always been elegant and calm, had a slight change in her expression. Could it be that you still have feelings for that brat? You should know that he framed cousin Yubing, Xia Yan said. Although there are no feelings, big brother Yi still helped our Xia family's disciples. Xia Shirshir sighed. That was just his disguise. Right now he's just a coward. I already said that I would defeat him in the skill comparison competition and expel him from our Xia family. This scared him to the point that he doesn't even dare to show his face. Xia Yan sneered, his tone full of disdain. Perhaps he has already left. Xia Shirshir sighed as she thought to herself. The young sword great master, who used to be a young sword great master, had actually left without saying a word after hearing the words of a genius at the essence origin 5th stage. Although Xia Shirshir was willing to accept Yi Guchen's tactfulness, she still felt a bit disappointed. After all, the former sword sect master Yi Guchen was too dazzling. Boom! The final result was as expected. Apart from Xia Yubing, Xia Yan was the one with the highest cultivation among the Xia family's juniors. With a final slash, he sent Xia Shirshir off the stage. Cousin Xia Yan is mighty! Xia Yinger screamed in excitement. Xia Yan had already become her new idol. In the stands, Xia Yuan and the others also nodded. Xia Yan didn't let them down. At this moment, Xia Yan stood on the stage and suddenly shouted, "Today, I, Xia Yan, wanted to personally crush that trashy Guchen and expel him from our Xia family. Unfortunately, he has already silently escaped. Who would have thought that the former sword sect master would actually be a dog with its tail between its legs?" Xia Yan's words resounded throughout the entire battle square. When the Xia family's disciples heard this, they all ridiculed and despised Yi Guchen for running away without a fight. Yeah, he doesn't even dare to show his face. What kind of ability is that? He doesn't deserve the title of sword sect master. To think that I worshipped him so much in the past. I must have been blind. However, just as the entire martial arts competition square was bustling with noise and clamor, a faint voice suddenly sounded out. "Oh, when did I say that I wanted to run away?" Chapter 16. This faint sentence did not use a loud voice, but it caused the entire battle arena to instantly become extremely quiet. The noise was instantly cut off, as if someone was choking their throat. Everyone's gaze turned towards the source of the voice at the same time. A well-proportioned young man in a black robe with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes walked over calmly. It was Yi Guchen. How is this possible? He didn't run away. He really came. What is he thinking? Is he here to ask for a beating? Maybe he's here to beg cousin Xia Yan for mercy. Haha. All kinds of guessing voices came one after another, but Yi Guchen did not care at all. His mind was watertight and would not be affected by external things. He really came. But it's a pity that the young sword grandmaster is now like this. The elder of the Song family sighed in the stands. Yi Guchen, who had once suppressed the genius of the Song family Song Daozhen, until he could not raise his head, and could only be ranked second for 10,000 years, had now fallen to this state, and was provoked by Xia Yan. So what if he's here? He's just asking to be humiliated. Bei Ming snorted. Everyone knew that Bei Dangui and Yi Guchen had a grudge against each other. Even the Bei family was extremely hostile towards Yi Guchen. Sai, who knows? My Xia family has raised an ingrate. If it wasn't for the genius of the Starry Sword Pavilion, Yubing would have been plotted against by this scoundrel. Xia Yuan sighed pretentiously. Hearing the word Starry Sword Pavilion, the elders of the other families were slightly stunned. The Starry Sword Pavilion was not a force of the Saint Origin dynasty, but they knew that if the Starry Sword Pavilion took action, it would not be too difficult to wipe out the Saint Origin dynasty. The so-called 5 great families of the Milky Way province were not even ants in front of the Starry Sword Pavilion. They were just dust. No matter how they thought about it, they couldn't figure out how Xia Yubing managed to form a relationship with the proud son of heaven of the Starry Sword Pavilion. As if he saw the seriousness in the eyes of the elders of the other families, the smile on Xia Yuan's face widened. At this moment, Xia Yan saw Yi Guchen in the fighting ring. He was stunned for a moment, then suddenly smiled. Good, you have come at the right time. Originally, I thought that you were not only a treacherous person, but also a coward. Now it seems that you are worthy of me taking action. Xia Yan puffed out his chest and spoke in a critical tone. There's no point in talking anymore. Xia Yan, my time is limited. I'll defeat you in one move, Yi Guchen said calmly. What? Not only Xia Yan, but Xia Shishir, Xia Ying, the many disciples of the Xia family in the crowd, as well as the people in the stands, were all stunned for a moment. What followed was a roar of laughter. Is this Yi Guchen here to be funny? Does he still think he's the former sword master, the leader of the 7 geniuses of the Sky River province? When Xia Shishir saw Yi Guchen's arrival, she was originally delighted. Although her cultivation was crippled, her ambition was still there. However, after hearing Yi Guchen's words, she could only shake her head. As he already started to talk big, Xia Shishir was a little disappointed. If even she was no match for Xia Yan, how could Yi Guchen, whose cultivation had fallen to the body refining realm, be a match for him? This is the biggest joke in the world. Xia Ying's lips curled into a mocking smile. Her face was scarred by Yi Guchen, so she hated Yi Guchen to the core. Now, what she hoped to see the most was Yi Guchen being crushed by Xia Yan. Has Yi Guchen lost his mind? Is he still immersed in his former glory? Xia Yuan shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. The other elders also did not think highly of Yi Guchen. What did you say? Say it again? Xia Yan scratched his ear with his finger, as if he did not hear clearly. Yi Guchen did not reply. Instead, he slowly walked into the arena. He had even killed Bei Ling, a genius at level 6 of the Origin Essence realm. Why would he care about Xia Yan, who was at level 5 of the Origin Essence realm? Clang! As soon as Jiechen appeared, his sword made a buzzing sound. Yi Guchen circulated all the blood in his body, and a blood-red flame rose from the tip of his sword. Then he swung his sword forward. It was one of the 3 Xiantian sword arts of the Xia family, Aurora Quick Sword. It was also a small skill Aurora's passing. Fast. Too fast. Xia Yan only reacted when Yi Guchen's sword was almost in front of him. His expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly raised his 9-ringed saber. His profound qi surged to resist Yi Guchen's sword. But did he have a chance? No. Clang. The tip of the sword touched the weakest part of the 9-ringed saber. Along with the explosion of the blood in his body, the 9-ringed saber broke into 2 with a cracking sound. Then, Yi Guchen changed from a stab to a sweep, and the blade hit Xia Yan's face, sending him flying. Puchi. Xia Yan, who had won first place in the Xia family sparring competition, and said that he would kick Yi Guchen out of the Xia family, was now lying on the ground below the arena like a dead dog. His face was swollen and bruised. The entire arena was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. A horrified expression appeared on the faces of all the Xia family disciples, including the Xia family elders. Yi Guchen's sword was pointed at the ground. His body was slender, and the wind blew past his black hair. From the beginning to the end, he was calm and indifferent. Sword master. This was the real sword master. One move. It was really just one move. Xia Shishir's delicate body swayed slightly, as if she could not stand properly. Previously, she had advised Yi Guchen to leave and live an ordinary life. But now, her advice was laughable. Xia Shishir stared at Yi Guchen in the arena. In a trance, she seemed to see the sword master that she could only look up to Yi Guchen. Impossible, this must be fake. Brother Xia Yan is an expert at the 5th level of the Essence realm. How could he be defeated by this trash in one move? This must be fake. Xia Ying shook her head crazily. She could not believe it, and her beautiful face with a scar was twitching. In the stands, Xia Yuan suddenly stood up and stared at Yi Guchen. Minor accomplishment. How did this Yi Guchen cultivate the Aurora Quick Sword to the minor accomplishment? It was very difficult to cultivate the Xiantian sword art to the minor accomplishment realm. Xia Yuan was in his 40s, but he only managed to cultivate the Aurora Quick Sword to the minor accomplishment realm. How old was Yi Guchen? If Xia Yuan knew, that Yi Guchen had comprehended the Aurora Quick Sword to the minor accomplishment realm in less than a month, he would probably want to kill himself with a piece of tofu. Yi Guchen's cultivation is only at the body refining realm, but his blood qi is terrifyingly strong, and his explosive power is also terrifying. But he didn't have such a strong blood qi in the past. The Song family elder was puzzled. This kid is really lucky. He actually survived Donggui's attack. Dark North's expression was gloomy, as he coldly thought to himself. Aren't you already crippled? How can you still? Under the arena, Xia Yan's face was swollen, and he could not speak clearly. At this moment, he was no longer arrogant. He looked at Yi Guchen with fear in his eyes. That's right, fear. It was as if he had seen the sword grandmaster of the past, the one who had suppressed so many geniuses and ranked first among the 7 sky prides, Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen ignored Xia Yan and turned to walk down the arena. Xia Yuan, who was in the stands, seemed to want to say something. But at this moment, boom! A majestic wave of vital energy suddenly came from the Xia family's core area. The vital energy was like frost and snow, and once it erupted, it actually covered the surrounding artificial mountains and plants with a layer of frost. That place is where Yubing is cultivating in seclusion. Could it be? Xia Yuan's face suddenly revealed a look of surprise. Not only that, the disciples of the Xia family, who were shocked by Yi Guchen, all turned their attention to that area. Accompanying the surging true qi was a terrifying sword intent. That sword intent seemed to faintly form a somewhat illusory whirlpool of water in the air. Shockingly, that whirlpool was made up of countless densely packed sword qi. Sword essence, it's actually sword essence. Xia Yuan and the other elders were all speechless. Sword essence. That was something that only 1 in 10,000 swordsmanship geniuses could comprehend. Following the earth-shattering vital energy and the terrifying sword essence whirlpool, a cold and elegant figure slowly descended from midair. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.